Chapter 181. Xiao Liang has the aura of a main character. The ripples around the strange valley disappeared with a shimmer. Two figures appeared in the valley. They were Xiao Liang and Lu Piao. Chu Zan was momentarily stunned, and then he sighed. Xiao Liang, this kid, really had great luck. The myriad heavenly mirror actually connected to him for the second time. Lu Piao was still in her divine soul state, but her divine soul was much stronger, and her cultivation had actually risen to the 5th level of the heaven realm. Xiao Liang had even broken through to the 5th level of the emperor realm. There was an old vine wrapped around his body. It had wrinkles on its surface, vines and a few gray-brown leaves. The old vine gave off an ancient aura. It seemed to have lived for countless years. Chu Zan knew that the old vine was a time-related treasure. Slow vine. Where the slow vine grew, it would form a mystic realm that accelerated time. The slow vine itself had the ability to slow down everything that approached it. This included attacks. Xiao Liang had actually obtained the slow vine. Although the slow vine had yet to recognize him as its master and had yet to be refined, it was only a matter of time before it recognized him as its master. Chu Zan could not help but sigh. This fellow, Xiao Liang, really had great luck. Having comprehended the Tao of fate, Chu Zan was no longer completely ignorant about luck. As he observed Xiao Liang now, it seemed that this kid was more than just the son of fate of the western region. It was very likely that he was the son of fate of the northern zone. He carried the great fate of the northern zone on his shoulders. It should be the transformation he had recently obtained. Since it was Xiao Liang, Chu Zan decided to take him in as a disciple. He felt a little regretful. He should have taken Xiao Liang in as a disciple back then. If he had taken Xiao Liang in as a disciple back then, when he entered the time mystic realm and obtained a treasure like the slow vine, it would definitely have triggered the system's reward. Moreover, the reward would definitely have been extraordinary. Xiao Liang had to be taken in as a disciple. Chu Zan made his decision and immediately revealed himself. After creating the Heaven and Earth Minor technique, he had decided that if he could meet Xiao Liang and Lu Piao again, he would pass this secret technique to Lu Piao. Now that he had the chance to pass the secret technique to her, he could also take Xiao Liang in as a disciple. It's you again? Chu Zan asked in surprise. Xiao Liang looked up and kneeled on the ground with a thud. Lu Piao was the same. Xiao Liang was a little nervous. He clenched the slow vine on his body with one hand. This was a precious treasure. Would that senior be tempted? He was very nervous. Lu Piao was the same. Greetings, senior. There's no need to be polite, none at all. Chu Zan smiled amiably. We're really fated to meet again. As he spoke, he looked at Xiao Liang and said, little fellow, your luck is really something else. You managed to obtain the slow vine. It was just a fluke. Xiao Liang was very nervous. He was afraid that this powerful expert would take a fancy to his slow vine. Chu Zan chuckled and said, there's no need to be nervous, it's just a slow vine. A mere plant isn't worthy of my attention. Since our meeting is fate, I'll help you get the slow vine to recognize you as its master. As Chu Zan spoke, he waved his hand and sent a stream of power over. The time illusion technique. Xiao Liang only felt a mysterious and unfathomable power attaching itself to his body. The mysterious power seemed somewhat familiar. Immediately after, his heart trembled. Was this not the time-related power that existed in the time mystic realm? Was this not also the special power that the slow vine possessed? He was shocked. This senior was too terrifying. He could control time with a wave of his hand. In just an instant, Xiao Liang felt that he had formed a connection with the slow Vince. The slow Vince had already acknowledged him as his master. Thank you, senior, Xiao Liang said respectfully. This senior was too powerful. With a wave of his hand, he used the power of time to make the slow vine recognize him as its master. It saved him a lot of time. Since we have met again, it means that we are fated. Are you willing to take me as your master? Chu Zan asked. He was wondering if Xiao Liang would reject him because he had Lu Piao as his master. I am willing, Xiao Liang kowtowed happily. He said, Master, please be our witness. From today on, Lu Piao and I are no longer master and disciple. Lu Piao continued, Senior, I know that I don't have the ability to guide Lianger. Since Lianger has acknowledged you as his master, I have no fate to be his master. Please be our witness. Chu Zan was stunned. What was this? He looked at Xiao Liang and Lu Piao with a strange expression. These two were not planning to continue being master and disciple, but were planning to be Tao partners. Xiao Liang had the bearing of a protagonist. All right, I'll be your witness. Chu Zan nodded. Thank you, master. Xiao Liang was overjoyed. He looked at Lu Piaopiao with a different kind of emotion. Lu Piaopiao blushed slightly under his gaze. Chu Zan was speechless. How many years older was Lu Piaopiao than Xiao Liang? He was no longer holding on to gold bricks, but a mountain of gold. What about Lu Piaopiao? Could she be considered an old cow eating young grass? They were all cultivators and had long lifespans. Age was not a problem. Chu Zan looked at Lu Piaopiao and said, "Have you gained enlightenment?" Lu Piaopiao looked ashamed and said, "I was stupid and failed to comprehend it." As expected, Chu Zan waved his hand and sent a small booklet over. This is the Heaven and Earth Minor Technique. Thank you, Senior. Lu Piaopiao accepted it in surprise. Chu Zan looked at Xiao Liang. Since he had accepted him as a disciple, he naturally had to teach him the cultivation techniques and the standard secret techniques of his own sect. He was just about to use the Heaven's Secrets origin probing technique to investigate Xiao Liang's talent and aptitude, and teach him a suitable cultivation technique, when the system's reward suddenly arrived. You have accepted Xiao Liang as a disciple. Because of his fate's transformation, he bears the fate of the Northern Zone. You have been rewarded with the limitless battle Dao and the God-vanquishing star radiance. As expected, Xiao Liang's fate had transformed, which caused him to become the son of fate of the Northern Zone. Furthermore, the system had rewarded him with a special cultivation technique. Limitless battle Dao. This meant that Xiao Liang's talent was that he was extremely good at combat. He was even better at combat than Ding Yu, who had the innate talent of the Heaven's Will Sword Pulse. He also knew how to fight. He was like a main character. Chu Zan received the limitless battle Dao and the God-vanquishing star radiance. The God-vanquishing star radiance was a dark blue long spear. The tip of the spear bloomed with starlight. He then activated the Heaven's Secrets origin probing technique. Xiao Liang, an abandoned child of the Xiao family of the western region. He was born for battle. Battle intent surges through his bones, heart, soul. Looking at Xiao Liang's information, Chu Zan could only sigh. Xiao Liang was awesome. Up until now, Xiao Liang was the disciple who was the best at fighting among his disciples. Due to the cultivation technique he cultivated, his strength might not be as good as Ding Yu and the others, but once he cultivated the limitless battle Dao, he would be the strongest among his disciples. Even Ding Yu could not be compared with him. Within the same realm, perhaps only Chu Pingfan's extreme Dao cultivation technique could compete with him. Innate battle bones, battle heart, and battle soul. It was simply too awesome. He was born for battle. Taking Xiao Liang in as a disciple was indeed a wise decision. The first human king of the Northern Zone was very likely to be Xiao Liang. He would definitely rise to prominence during the opening of the Asura ancient land and crush countless geniuses. Chu Zan looked at Xiao Liang with great satisfaction and said, "Since you've already become my disciple, I'll teach you a cultivation technique. The cultivation technique you're currently cultivating is too low level and doesn't match your talent." Lu Piaopiao's expression was awkward when she heard this. Xiao Liang's cultivation technique was taught by her, and it was also what she thought was the most suitable cultivation technique for Xiao Liang's talent. This cultivation technique was also a famous and peerless divine technique in her era. However, from Senior's perspective, it was too low level. Him calling it too low level was probably just him being nice. Putting it bluntly, he probably thought that it was too trashy. Chapter 182, Buddhist Attendance. Thank you, Master. Xiao Liang had an expectant look on his face. What kind of peerless cultivation technique would his master impart to him? The cultivation technique that Lu Piaopiao had imparted to him was indeed extremely powerful. However, for some reason, Xiao Liang felt that he was unable to devote his heart and soul to cultivating it. Chu Zan raised his hand and pointed with a finger. The Sage Master Halo's ability was added to his strand of power, which directly transmitted the limitless battle Dao into Xiao Liang's divine soul. Boom! Xiao Liang's battle intent instantly boiled. His entire person seemed to be transforming, and his battle intent almost seemed to be materializing. Lu Piaopiao was shocked. His battle intent was materializing. What kind of peerless cultivation technique did Senior pass on to Xiao Liang? Xiao Liang closed his eyes and comprehended the limitless battle Dao. Half an hour later, he woke up from his state of comprehension. He was amazed at the power of the limitless battle Dao. As long as he cultivated this peerless cultivation technique, he was confident that his combat power would increase tenfold. Thank you, Master, for imparting this technique to me. Xiao Liang kowtowed several times in excitement. Get up. Since you're my disciple, how can you be poor? Chuzan passed all of the standard secret techniques to Xiaoliang and also the God-vanquishing star radiance. Of course, in order to attract too much attention, Chuzan used some tricks to cover up the God-vanquishing star radiance's brilliance. It made it look like an ordinary long spear. Xiaoliang held the God-vanquishing star radiance in his hands. He was shocked. Outsiders might not be able to sense how powerful the God-vanquishing star radiance was, but he could. How powerful was this long spear? It was definitely a divine weapon. No wait, it even surpassed the level of a divine weapon. Besides the God-vanquishing star radiance, Chuzan also gave him some other secret talismans and artifacts. He passed a specially made communication talisman to him. Xiaoliang was extremely excited. Was this the treatment one received as a disciple of a super expert? Back then, he had spent a lot of effort and went through a lot of hardship simply to obtain some spiritual medicine and a treasured weapon. Work hard and cultivate. The 9 zones are about to enter a period of great turmoil. Only strength can protect you. Danger comes with opportunity. Don't disappoint me. Yes, Master. Chuzan sighed. Not counting in name disciples, he had already taken in 6 disciples. According to the order of seniority, Xiaoliang was currently the youngest disciple. After learning the secret techniques he passed on to them, as long as they met, they would definitely realize that they hailed from the same sect. There will be an opportunity for you in the southern region. Make good use of it. Chuzan was just about to end the communication when he suddenly saw Lu Piao looking at him eagerly. He took out a piece of gauze and transferred it over. This is a secret divine soul treasure, which can ensure that your soul will not be destroyed. Since you are already in the divine soul state, properly comprehend the heaven and earth minor technique. Recovering your physical body is just a small matter. Thank you, Senior, Lu Piao said happily. Chuzan nodded. Lu Piao was almost Xiaoliang's Dao partner. She might even call him master on that day. He could not be too stingy. It was just a small divine soul secret treasure. It was nothing much really. He placed the myriad heavenly mirrors mark on Xiaoliang's body so that he could initiate a connection with him whenever he needed to. Before deactivating the myriad heavenly mirror, Chuzan said, "You have a few senior brothers. When you meet in the future, you will naturally be able to recognize each other. Fellow disciples must not kill each other." Yes, Master. Chuzan then stored the myriad heavenly mirror away, hoping that Xiaoliang would bring him a pleasant surprise in the future. This time, he did not deceive Xiaoliang. This disciple should not go astray. Xiaoliang did not leave the valley. Instead, he stayed in the valley and cultivated the limitless battle Dao, as well as the various secret techniques Chuzan had imparted to him. Lu Piao cultivated the heaven and earth minor technique. Her divine soul communed with the law of heaven and earth. Chuzan then turned his attention to Ding Yu and Wang Luo's situations. Ding Yu was exploring a certain secret realm. Wang Luo was the same. As the day the Asura ancient land opened approached, the northern zone entered a period of peace. The various large factions were making preparations for the opening of the Asura ancient land. After discussion, the various large factions decided to hold the battle for the quota spots in the southern region. The time had not been decided yet. The 3 sects and 2 empires of the southern region were becoming more and more connected to the factions behind them. Qin Qian, the great Qin empress, had entered secluded cultivation and rarely revealed herself. As for the spies in the Qin royal family, they were in contact with the great Qian dynasty every day. The spies of the various factions were becoming more and more active in digging out information and passing them on to the factions they belonged to. There were also some spies of the various factions who had been discovered and killed. Chuzan remained in the courtyard and watched the storm brew. A month had passed since he accepted Xiaoliang as his disciple. Chuzan was using the Dao-seeking mirror to search for Dao realm experts. The system's reward suddenly arrived. Your disciple, Demon Buddha, has spread Buddhist Dharma and enlightened a million Buddhists. You have been rewarded with the left and right Buddhist attendants. Chuzan was pleasantly surprised. Demon Buddha was indeed worthy of his title as the son of the fate of the demon zone. Moreover, the birth of Buddhism had even affected the fate of the demon zone. He sure knew how to stir up trouble. The probability of him triggering the system reward was higher than everyone else. It had only been a short while, but there were already a million Buddhists. The demon zone's Buddhist transformation plan had a very promising future. Chuzan examined the reward. The Buddhist attendants are not like puppets. They can sense Buddha's will for all living beings and can evolve. Their current strength is at the 5th level of the divine realm. As expected of a system product, they were indeed extraordinary. There were 2 Buddhist attendants in total, and they were called the left and right Buddhist attendants. Chuzan received the reward. The Buddhist attendants had a golden body, and were bald and burly. They wore large Buddhist beads, looked dignified, and wore monk robes. Their muscles were well defined. "Greetings, Buddha," the Buddhist attendants bowed and said. Chuzan nodded and waved his hand to send the Buddhist attendants into the pocket dimension. Including Chu Yi and Chu Er, he already had 4 divine realm subordinates. Chu Yi and Chu Er were transforming and had already surpassed the scope of being mere puppets. The left and right Buddhist attendants were also not as simple as puppets. They were a rather special kind of existence. Moreover, regardless of whether it was Chu Yi, Chu Er, or the left and right Buddhist attendants, they could all cultivate. Their strength was not stagnant. Demon Buddha had already converted 1,000,000 Buddhists. Was the 10 million mark still far away? Chuzan was looking forward to the time when the number of Buddhists exceeded 10 million, and also to what Demon Buddha would do next. Time flew by. It was not far from the 15-year milestone. Chuzan's cultivation had also risen to the 8th level of the divine realm. He was getting closer and closer to the Tao realm. The stable Tao principle allowed him to gain a deeper comprehension of the great Tao. Moreover, he could already use 1/5 of the power of the Tao. Chu Pingfan had already entered the accumulation period and was preparing to break through to the Emperor realm. Chuzan had high hopes for him. The strength of the 2 Buddhist attendants had increased, having reached the 6th level of the divine realm. The number of Buddhist followers in the demon zone had broken through 3 million. However, Buddhism had finally attracted the attention of the large tribes in the demon zone. Demon Buddha had encountered some setbacks and had fought with them a few times. He had even escaped a few times with injuries. Many Buddhist disciples were also killed. As the spread of Buddhist Dharma became aware of the effectiveness of Buddhist power in countering demonic power, some demon tribes began to study Buddhist Dharma, wanting to use it for themselves. However, after cultivating, they began to change. They became devout Buddhists who took the initiative to persuade other people to convert. In short, the situation in the demon zone had become treacherous due to the appearance of Demon Buddha. Chuzan did not interfere, nor did he pay too much attention to it. Instead, he spent his time on bitter cultivation. The Tao-seeking mirror was only used once every few days. However, even after such a long time had passed, no new Tao realm experts had been found. At the border of the southern and eastern regions, somewhere within the vast mountain range. In the place where the little evil king had once fought against the netherworld race member, an illusory figure suddenly appeared. Chapter 183. The Great Terror of the Chu Family. The illusory figure gradually solidified and turned into a white-haired old man. As the old man appeared, a gloomy and cold aura filled the surroundings. A member of the netherworld race. He disappeared here. Did the possession fail? Will our clan be exposed because of this? This Daoyuan is about to end. We can't wait any longer. Our race must seize this opportunity and start anew from the southern region. The white-haired old man opened and closed his mouth, emitting some strange sound waves. Not long after, figures started appearing. Grand Elder. A group of netherworld race members gathered behind the white-haired old man. There were only more than 100 people. There were men, women, and children, and their levels of strength varied. The white-haired old man was the strongest. His aura indicated that he was at the peak of the heaven realm, and only half a step away from the divine realm. The Grand Elder looked at the clansmen behind him. After experiencing the catastrophe, the netherworld race had been struggling to survive in the 9 zones. The over 100 members of the netherworld race here represented 1/3 of the remaining netherworld race members in the 9 zones. The netherworld race, which used to be extremely powerful, had declined to this extent. The southern region is about to undergo a great upheaval. The 9 zones are also about to welcome a change. The opportunity for our netherworld race to rise again has arrived. If we want to survive and rise up again, we have to keep a low profile. We have to change our identities and wait for the right timing and opportunity. The patriarch looked at the members of the netherworld race. He waved his hand and condensed a map projection with his spiritual power. It was a map of the southern region. The map marked out the major forces. One of the regions within the Great Qin dynasty's territory was marked red. The place marked red was Chu County. The Grand Elder said, after investigation, the Chu County's Chu family is the most suitable target for us in the entire southern region. We're going there to possess the Chu family and take over their identities. For the foreseeable future, we will be members of the Chu family. In the future, we must act in the same way the Chu family does. We must not expose our identity. Otherwise, our entire clan will be exterminated before our very eyes. Do you understand? The members of the Netherworld race said, "We understand. We are members of the Chu family. From now on, this clan of the Netherworld race no longer exists." The Grand Elder was very satisfied. The Netherworld race has been struggling for a long time. Most of the inhabitants of the 9 zones have already forgotten about the Netherworld race. As long as the Netherworld race maintains a low profile and appears as humans, we will have a chance to rise up in the future. As he said, he waved his hand and released his spiritual power, enveloping the clan members behind him. The Grand Elder's body flashed and disappeared, as he traveled toward Chu County. The Chu family was a very special family in the entire southern region. They kept a low profile and were not particularly strong. Furthermore, the location of Chu County was safely tucked away inside the Great Qin dynasty's territory, and would not be attacked by powerful forces. They were the most suitable targets for the Netherworld race to possess and replace. Be it the Great Qin dynasty or the Great Qian dynasty, they each had their own foundations and could easily expose the identity of the Netherworld race. Even though he was a half-step divine realm expert, he did not dare to act recklessly. The Netherworld race had been in a state of decline for too long. They could not withstand another blow. The possession ability of the Netherworld race was a taboo for the human race. Once they were exposed, there would definitely be human experts appearing left and right to wipe out the Netherworld race. After so many years, most of the human forces were unaware of the existence of the Netherworld race. However, there were still records of the Netherworld race kept in the annals of some of the forces that had been around for a long time. Especially the human kings' families. No matter how much the southern region had declined, because of their special characteristics, the Netherworld race Grand Elder still needed to act carefully. Had it just been him alone, he naturally would not need to be so careful. However, his survival was related to the survival of this entire Netherworld race clan. He could not afford to be careless. After conducting some investigation, he finally decided on a target. The Chu family. In the entirety of the southern region, the Chu family's situation made them the most suitable target. Their isolation from everyone else would make it difficult for the Netherworld race clan to be discovered and exposed. The other major forces were too active. Only the Chu family kept a low profile. They had always been guarding Chu County, and their strength could not be considered too strong either. They only needed to possess their members and replace them, slowly assimilating their human bodies. Once the process of assimilation was complete, they would not be discovered unless the other party had special secret techniques or detection treasures. They would become members of the Chu family in the future. The Netherworld race had vanished from the 9 zones for a long period of time. As such, human experts would not use their treasures or secret techniques for no reason to check if someone had been possessed. In history, the Netherworld race had once wrought great havoc onto the human race. Back then, every time the human race had a big operation or gathering, there would be experts carrying treasures to detect if any of their members had been possessed. After the fall of the Netherworld race, this practice and habit of the human race had been discarded. This was an opportunity. The Grand Elder was full of confidence. The Chu family did not even have an Emperor realm expert. It would not be a problem for them to possess and replace the Chu family. When the Asura ancient land opened, he would send someone with the status of a heaven blessed of the Chu family to participate in the fight for the Fate treasures. With his many years of secret planning, coupled with the Netherworld race's special abilities, their Netherworld race clan would definitely be able to obtain a Fate treasure. With the protection of that Fate treasure, they would not be exposed easily and would be able to develop and grow. Given the strength of the Grand Elder, he arrived at Chu County very quickly. Chu County was not small, and the resources here were abundant. Especially after the Chu family started producing and trading pills, the resources accumulated here through trade grew rapidly. The Grand Elder headed straight for the Chu family's territory. Their Netherworld race clan only had a total of 100 members or so, and the target of their possession would naturally be the direct descendants of the Chu family, those with high status and outstanding talent. The Grand Elder was very confident that, given his strength, he could ensure that the Netherworld race would be able to silently possess a direct descendant of the Chu family. In the future, the Chu family would be one of the headquarters of the Netherworld race. Inside a small courtyard within the Chu family's territory, Chuzan was cultivating when he suddenly opened his eyes. He revealed a surprised expression as a cold and gloomy aura rapidly approached the Chu family's territory. This intruder had a strange aura, and his strength was not weak. He was an existence that had almost reached the divine realm. He was curious, why did such an expert come to the Chu family's territory? At the same time, he was also puzzled. The Chu family was not strong, and they were keeping a low profile. How could they be targeted by others? Moreover, the one who was targeting the Chu family did not seem to be a human. That cold and gloomy aura was very unique, and his figure was akin to an illusory shadow. He did not seem to have a physical body. A ghost? Chu Zan's first thought was to think of ghosts. Was this not very similar to the ghosts in the stories and legends of Earth in his previous life? However, there was no such thing as a ghost in the 9 zones. The other party had already arrived at the Chu family's territory in an instant, and was about to use a secret technique to seal off the Chu family's territory. Chu Zan felt very helpless. Why did someone come to his doorstep again? Ever since the heretic cult had stopped, no one had come to the Chu family's territory to mess with them, but now a strong cultivator had arrived. Luckily, Chu Zan's strength had increased rapidly. Otherwise, it would have been troublesome if he had encountered this enemy before he broke through. Sitting in the small courtyard, he did not move. A stream of divine power materialized and restrained the intruder, transporting him over to the small courtyard. The Grand Elder had been about to use a secret technique to seal off the Chu family's territory to prevent any accidents from happening, as well as to prevent anyone from sending out a message. However, before he could make a move, he felt his hair stand on end. A terrifying power instantly materialized and sealed him and all of his clansmen. It's over. The Grand Elder felt despair. Why was this small Chu family hiding such a terrifying powerhouse? Was there something wrong with this human expert's brain? He was obviously very powerful, but he kept a low profile. His presence here, or lack thereof, had completely fooled the Grand Elder. This was the same as that human expert who had suddenly appeared and tricked the Netherworld race back then. Why was it happening again? Chapter 184. Turning the Netherworld race into a ghost race, Ancient Netherworld Scripture. Inside the small courtyard, a group of Netherworld race members stood trembling behind the Grand Elder. Their faces were filled with confusion and despair. Did the Grand Elder not say that this trip was almost certainly safe? Their target was just the small Chu family. Why had something gone wrong? Even the Grand Elder had been captured. It's over, our Netherworld race clan is going to die. The Grand Elder's lips trembled, and his body shook. His originally illusory body trembled as if it was about to disperse. Chu Zan looked at the 100 or so members of this Netherworld race clan. Heaven's Secrets Origin Probing Technique. The Netherworld race has existed for a very long time. After being defeated in the Great Calamity, they were barely able to survive. The Grand Elder of the Netherworld race, a half-step divine realm expert, wanted to possess the members of the Chu family and, through them, seize the Fate treasure while waiting for the opportunity to rise up again. Chu Zan was astonished. Was this the Netherworld race? They looked similar to humans. The only difference was that their illusory bodies looked like ghosts from the stories and legends of his previous life. Was he fated to encounter the Netherworld race? The Tao-seeking mirror had found Yusu and pulled her into the Great Tao communication group. Now, the Grand Elder of the Netherworld race had brought his clansmen over to the Chu family. On a separate note, the Chu family was really popular. Why did all of them like to seek out the Chu family? Looking at the trembling members of the Netherworld race, Chu Zan suddenly had a bold idea. There were no ghosts in the 9 zones. He could create a ghost race. He could turn the Netherworld race into a ghost race and create a new race to add some variety to the 9 zones. The innate ability of the Netherworld race was to possess others. Chu Zan was moved. However, it was not easy to turn the Netherworld race into a ghost race. Although the Netherworld race did have some ghost-like traits, they were not ghosts in reality. He had to create a cultivation technique that would allow the Netherworld race to cultivate and then transform into ghosts. It was just like turning a demon into a Buddhist. You are calm, thoughtful and open-minded. You want to turn the Netherworld race into a ghost race. You have been rewarded with the ancient Netherworld scripture. The system's reward suddenly arrived. Chu Zan was overjoyed. The system's reward had been triggered. He hurriedly examined the reward. The ancient Netherworld scripture is the holy scripture of ghosts. If a soul cultivates this technique, it can turn into a ghost. If the Netherworld race cultivates this technique, they will quickly transform into a ghost race. After reading the description of the ancient Netherworld scripture, Chuzan was amazed by this bizarre and powerful cultivation technique. If a normal person cultivated this technique, their physical body would gradually rot and, eventually, their soul would transform into a ghost-like existence. If one's physical body was destroyed, and only their soul was left, they would be able to transform into a ghost and gain the powerful abilities of a ghost. Ghosts were sinister and terrifying. They were special existences. If ghosts appeared in the 9 zones, many cultivators would be terrified and find them hard to deal with for quite some time. There were only 100 or so members of the Netherworld race in front of him right now. It was not difficult to turn them all into ghosts. Once they succeeded in becoming ghosts, he would have a ghost race under his command. Chuzan received the ancient Netherworld scripture, and the system instilled the technique into his mind. Chuzan very soon mastered the ancient Netherworld scripture, in which were recorded many skills of the ghost race. Ghostly possession was just a very common and ordinary technique. For example, some skills like ghosts passing through walls were also recorded. The ghost race did have its flaws, but since the ghost race would be new and unfamiliar to the cultivators of the 9 zones, they would not be able to discover any flaws to deal with the ghost race easily within a short period of time. It was inevitable that the emergence of the ghost race would cause a certain degree of panic. Cultivating the ancient Netherworld scripture would cause the body to gradually decay. That was a problem for ordinary cultivators, but not for Chuzan. His indestructible chaos physique could completely counteract that negative aspect of the ancient Netherworld scripture's cultivation. His divine soul would not turn into a gloomy ghostly state, but he could still use the power of the ancient Netherworld scripture. Chuzan muttered in his heart, "From now on, not only am I Buddha, but also the freaking ancestor of the ghosts." Looking at the members of the Netherworld race, Chuzan narrowed his eyes and smiled. Using force to turn the members of the Netherworld race into a ghost race was not the right way to show how powerful he was. What Chuzan needed was for the Netherworld race to willingly turn into a ghost race. If they were unwilling, he would throw them into the world-purifying glazed pagoda and let them be illuminated by Buddhist light for a period of time. After suffering a great deal of damage, they would most likely change their minds. If they were still unwilling, he would plant soul seals on them. Chuzan had plenty of ways to turn the Netherworld race into a ghost race. He also had plenty of ways to make them loyal to him. As long as he cultivated the ancient Netherworld scripture, he would be their ghost ancestor and they would never betray or disobey him. The Grand Elder's heart trembled, and he felt a chill run down his spine. He had a premonition that something bad was about to happen. It seemed like the Netherworld race was about to disappear from this world. "Almighty human expert, we were just passing by." The Grand Elder wanted to quibble. Chuzan said with a smile, "Don't panic. I have no ill intentions." "No ill intentions, yeah right." The Grand Elder sensed malice in his smile, and the feeling that the Netherworld race was about to face a great disaster grew stronger. The Netherworld race. Chuzan sighed and continued, "The Netherworld race has no future. No matter how you plot and use all sorts of methods, in the end, you will not be able to create a future in the Great Tao." As expected, the Grand Elder's face turned ashen. This expert was going to exterminate the Netherworld race. He gritted his teeth and said, "Almighty human expert, our Netherworld race has experts too. If you really want to exterminate our Netherworld race, aren't you afraid that our Netherworld race experts will slaughter the human race, disregarding all costs?" At this point, he could only put up a tough front. Chuzan shook his head and smiled lightly. "I don't want to exterminate your Netherworld race." He then added, "Also, I know that ancestor of your Netherworld race, who also calls me senior." The expression of the Netherworld race Grand Elder changed again and again. "Senior, if you want to blame me, then just kill me. Let the rest of my clan members go, and let the Netherworld race live." He was terrified. Even the ancestor of the Netherworld race had to call him senior. How could he be stubborn about it then? "I've already said that I don't intend to exterminate your Netherworld race. On the contrary, I want to give your Netherworld race a chance at survival." Chuzan sighed. The Grand Elder had a look of suspicion on his face. Why would a human expert be so kind-hearted? The Netherworld race wants to seize great fortune and rise to power. However, to do so they must discard the name of the Netherworld race and transform into the Ghost race. "Are you willing? Just changing our name?" the Grand Elder asked carefully. It would not be a problem if it was just a name change. Although they would not be called the Netherworld race anymore, his roots were still of the Netherworld race. Transforming the Netherworld race into a ghost race will allow you to obtain great fortune. The ghost race is stronger than the netherworld race. This is the opportunity for your netherworld race to rise up. Chuzan said as he pointed with his finger and transmitted the information about the ghost race into the Grand Elder's soul. The Grand Elder's cold aura instantly filled the air. After a long while, he finally came back to his senses. His face was full of shock. This was the ghost race. It had some of the characteristics of the netherworld race, but was much stronger than the netherworld race and had more abilities. If things were really as described in the information transmission, how strong would the ghost race be? However, although the ghost race was different from the netherworld race, there were a good number of similarities. If their netherworld race clan was transformed into the ghost race, their branch of the netherworld race would be gone. However, it would not disappear completely. The fate of the netherworld race would live on through the ghost race. The Grand Elder was moved. After all, as the Grand Elder of the netherworld race, he could not give up his sense of belonging to the netherworld race. They would transform into the ghost race. Even though they were no longer physically part of the netherworld race, henceforth, they would still carry on the fate of the netherworld race. However, from this day on, the name of their netherworld race clan would really disappear. It would be replaced by the ghost race. Chapter 185. The First Ghost of the Nine Zones, Fondue Ghost King. The Grand Elder hesitated and could not make a decision. Chuzan said again, the name of the netherworld race is doomed to disappear. You will have preserved the roots of the netherworld race by turning into ghosts. If you don't turn into ghosts, the netherworld race will disappear completely. I'm not exaggerating this. The netherworld race can't survive this Daoyuan. The Grand Elder was shocked. He did not doubt the words of an expert like Chuzan. The netherworld race could not survive this Daoyuan. They would not be able to rise up again. Only by turning themselves into ghosts would they have a chance of survival. The Grand Elder struggled inwardly. After a long while, he asked again, Senior, why do you want to save the netherworld race? Chuzan smiled and said, I am a seeker of fate. Your netherworld race ancestor is fated with me. Since you came here, no matter what your purpose is, it's also fate. I'll protect your lives. Do you think that the current netherworld race still means anything to me? The Grand Elder fell silent. Indeed. Such an expert, how could the declining netherworld race still be worth anything to him? Please allow us to discuss it. The Grand Elder could not make a decision, so he chose to discuss it with the other members of the netherworld race. Very well. The Grand Elder looked at his clansmen with complicated eyes. These 100 or so clansmen represented 1/3 of the netherworld race. The other two netherworld race clans were hidden somewhere else. It had been a long time since they had contacted each other. It was even possible that the other two netherworld race clans had perished. The group of members of the Dark Clan discussed it with complicated expressions. Before coming to the Chu family's territory, they had been full of confidence and fighting spirit. They were going to fight for the rise of the netherworld race. In the end though, they had learned of such a cruel reality. There was no hope for the netherworld race. The only way out was to transform themselves into the ghost race. In fact, there was no choice at all. If they did not become ghosts, they would die. If they became ghosts, they would live. The choice was already written in the stars. After a long while, the Grand Elder said with a complicated and respectful tone, Senior, we are willing to transform into the ghost race. A wise choice. Chuzan was not surprised by the netherworld race's choice. I will teach you the ghost race's cultivation method. He raised his hand and pointed his finger, transmitting some of the cultivation methods in the ancient netherworld scripture to the Grand Elder. Then, he waved his hand and moved the members of the netherworld race into the pocket dimension. He also earmarked a separate location for the netherworld race to cultivate. That location was a dark valley in the pocket dimension, which was just right to cultivate the ancient netherworld scripture. Thank you, Senior. The netherworld race members expressed their gratitude one after another. No matter what this human expert's thoughts and intentions were, he was worthy of their gratitude as he had not exterminated them. Following that, the Grand Elder passed on the ancient netherworld scripture's cultivation method to every member of the netherworld race. From then on, the netherworld race began to cultivate in the Dark Valley. Their spiritual power was constantly being transformed, slowly turning into a form of sinister and terrifying power. When the Grand Elder started cultivating, he realized how powerful this cultivation method was, and that it could completely change the physical bodies of the netherworld race. Once they were completely transformed into the ghost race, it meant that his branch of the netherworld race would have completely disappeared. However, they would continue to bear the fate of the netherworld race. This cultivation method was very powerful, and the abilities of the ghost race were also very strong. He had to admit that they were stronger than the netherworld race and had a more promising future. Moreover, if they succeeded in transforming into the ghost race, they would become natural ghosts, and not ghosts that were formed after cultivating from a divine soul. The netherworld race had similarities with ghosts to begin with, so it was not an exaggeration to say that they were this world's natural ghosts. After cultivating the ancient netherworld scripture, the Grand Elder finally knew for certain that the ghost race really had a better future than the netherworld race. Given his current cultivation situation, once he transformed into a ghost, his cultivation would break through to the divine realm. If the netherworld race wants to become strong, they must transform into the ghost race. The gaze of the Grand Elder turned firm. He even thought about looking for the other two netherworld race clans and having them transform into ghosts as well. Chuzan paid great attention to the progress of their transformation to the ghost race. After all, this was related to triggering a system reward. It was also a clan that he had truly created with his own hands. Inside a dark underground cave, Yusu was cultivating while paying attention to the messages in the Great Tao communication group. Suddenly, she frowned. What's going on? Why has there been a change in my relationship with the netherworld race? She frowned. The netherworld race had not been wiped out, and their fate had actually grown stronger. However, for some reason, her relationship with the netherworld race had undergone an inexplicable change. This change was very strange, and even she, a Tao realm expert, could not understand it. It shouldn't be a bad thing. A stronger fate means that the netherworld race has become stronger, Yusu muttered to herself. She closed her eyes and continued to cultivate. At the same time, she diverted a part of her consciousness to pay attention to any messages from the Great Tao communication group. The Great Tao communication group might be her fortuitous encounter. Half a month later, the Grand Elder was the first to complete the transformation. He now had a ghostly form, his strength soared, and his fate had been transformed. He had reached the divine realm. The netherworld race disappeared from his mind. He was now the king of the ghost race. He was also the first ghost of the 9 zones. He had an inexplicable fate and an extraordinary talent. You created the first ghost of the 9 zones and became the ghost race's ancestor. You have been rewarded with the Fengdu secret realm. Chuzan was delighted. He had created the first ghost of the 9 regions and, as expected, that achievement had triggered the system reward. This branch of the netherworld race would all become ghosts. Once the ghost race was formed, there would likely be another system reward as well. He examined the system reward. Fengdu Secret Realm. It's a gloomy, terrifying, and ghastly dwelling place for ghosts. The ghost race's strength can be enhanced here. Their cultivation speed will be doubled, and the realm can be upgraded. The ghost race finally had their own pocket dimension and territory. The Fengdu Secret Realm was very similar to the rumored netherworld. Moreover, it could be upgraded. Chuzan received the Fengdu Secret Realm and waved his hand. He activated the Fengdu Secret Realm and placed its entrance inside the ghost race's dark valley. This valley would serve as the entrance to Fengdu Secret Realm. After the Fengdu Secret Realm was set up, the Grand Elder came to Chuzan and knelt on the ground. I pay my respects to the ghost ancestor. The Grand Elder's face was pale and bloodless. The aura around his body was extremely gloomy and exuded a sense of terror. Chu Pingfan stood to the side and looked at this terrifying guy. You're the first ghost of the 9 zones, so I'll bestow upon you the title of Fengdu Ghost King, Chuzan said. Thank you, Ghost Ancestor. At this moment, the netherworld race's Grand Elder became the Fengdu Ghost King. You have bestowed the title of Fengdu Ghost King, you have received the Ghost King seal as a reward. Chuzan accepted the reward. A seal that was as black as ink that was engraved with the images of 100 ghosts appeared in his hand. He looked at the Ghost King seal in his hand. It contained powerful Tao principles that could suppress 100 ghosts. Once this seal appeared, none of the ghosts would dare to disobey. Anyone holding this seal would wield the authority of the Fengdu Ghost King. Chuzan waved his hand and bestowed the Ghost King seal to the Fengdu Ghost King. This is the Ghost King seal. You are the first Fengdu Ghost King. The Fengdu Ghost King excitedly took the Ghost King seal and kowtowed 3 times. Go. Chuzan waved his hand. Yes, Ghost Ancestor. The Ghost King retreated and returned to the pocket dimension, then entered the Fengdu Secret Realm. Chuzan looked at the remaining members of the netherworld race. He looked forward to what rewards he would receive after they all turned into ghosts. Chapter 186. Establishment of the Ghost Race, Yin Dao Principle. 13th uncle, what's that? Chu Pingfan asked curiously. The Fengdu Ghost King looked very terrifying and gave off a sinister feeling. It's a ghost, a special existence. Chu Zan looked at Chu Pingfan, who had already grown into a youth, and said. Ghost. Chu Pingfan was extremely surprised. Chu Zan briefly described the unique points of a ghost. Chu Pingfan was shocked after hearing it. He asked, are ghosts so powerful? And they can possess people too? It's just that their abilities are quite special, but their flaws are very obvious. Once there's a method to specifically target ghosts, even if one isn't strong, they can still deal with ghosts that are stronger than them. Chu Zan shook his head and said, your extreme Dao is very powerful. You won't be disadvantaged when fighting ghosts. In fact, as long as one cultivated the 100 Tempering Divine Technique and the Immovable Mountain Technique, which were powerful Divine Soul Secret techniques, the abilities of the ghost race would be rather ineffective against them. Even so, the ghost race was still extremely powerful. Chu Pingfan nodded and went back to the universe space to continue cultivating. He wanted to break through to the Emperor realm as soon as possible. Chu Zan had been paying attention to the progress of the remaining members of the Netherworld race. After the Grand Elder, many powerful members of the Netherworld race turned into ghosts one after another. The first to complete the transformation were the stronger members of the Netherworld race. The Grand Elder had been a half-step Divine Realm expert before transformation. The second to turn into a ghost was the clan leader of the Netherworld race clan, who was at the 3rd level of the Heaven Realm. Among this group of Netherworld race members, a young girl caught Chu Zan's attention. She was only at the 9th level of the Truth Realm, but after transforming into a ghost, she directly broke through to the Emperor Realm. The speed at which she turned into a ghost was faster than the other Supreme Realm and Emperor Realm Netherworld race experts. This meant that she had a special talent for the ancient Netherworld scripture. Chu Zan moved her out. Among this group of Netherworld race members, her talent was the strongest, so she could be nurtured. Greetings, Ghost Ancestor. The young girl bowed with an extremely respectful expression. Chu Zan looked at her. She had a pretty face, and her weak appearance made people feel pity for her. She was an extremely pretty female ghost. From now on, you shall be called Yuer. Thank you, Ancestor, for bestowing me a name. Yuer kowtowed respectfully. Chu Zan pointed with his finger and passed on more techniques from the ancient Netherworld scripture to her. He then refined a few ghost artifacts and gave them to her. Thank you, Ancestor, Yuer said happily. Get up and cultivate well. Yes, Yuer did not enter the pocket dimension. Instead, she floated over and entered the universe space. After circling around Chu Pingfan, she suddenly pounced on him and used the ghost's possession ability. Chu Pingfan only felt a chill all over his body. He was going to lose control of his body at any moment. He let out a low shout and a powerful aura erupted from his body. The saber aura within his body was piercingly cold, and his entire body was as domineering as a saber. The wooden saber that had been stuck to his back all this time also emitted a strange aura. Pooh! Yuer was forced out of Chu Pingfan's body in a daze. She was stunned. This was the first time she had used the ghost possession technique, and it was even against someone whose cultivation level was lower than hers. She had actually failed. Chu Pingfan was already swinging his saber at her. Shua! Yuer's figure turned into illusory and disappeared. However, his sharp attack was imbued with a special kind of sharpness. It was extremely powerful. Even though she had turned illusory, she still received a strong impact. Little ghost girl, you're too impudent. Chu Pingfan said angrily. Are you angry? I was just playing with you. I'm not trying to hurt you. Yuer appeared and stuck out her tongue at Chu Pingfan. HMPH, stay away from me. Don't disturb my cultivation. Chu Pingfan snorted and turned his back to ignore her. Chu Zan paid full attention to what was going on, but did not say anything to stop her. Chu Pingfan was too lonely. It was a good thing if he had Yuer, this lively female ghost, to play with him. As for the difference between humans and ghosts, such a trivial thing did not matter to Chu Zan at all. 1 month later, all of the members of the Netherworld race had turned into ghosts. They were gloomy and cold. After turning into ghosts, their strength increased. The Fengdu Ghost King summoned the ghosts to the Fengdu secret realm immediately, and the newly minted ghosts cultivated there, except for Yuer. You have created a new race in the 9 zones, the ghost race. You have been rewarded with the Yin Dao principle. The system's reward arrived. It was the Yin Dao principle. Turning the Netherworld race into the ghosts was indeed a wise decision. Chu Zan praised his own cleverness. He received the reward. A mysterious, seemingly invisible, but also dark, Yin Dao principle appeared around his body. Chu Zan entered a state of comprehension and carefully comprehended the Yin Dao principle. He discovered that the Yin Dao principle the system had rewarded him with was rather peculiar. Apart from the yin of yin and yang, it also contains sinister Dao intent. Why do I feel that, after mastering this Dao principle, I'll become really good at deceiving people? Chu Zan muttered in his heart. Of his Dao principles, one was stable while the other was yin. They could cooperate with each other. On the surface, he would be as steady as a mountain, but behind the scenes, he would be secretly deceiving people. If he comprehended and cultivated both Dao principles at the same time, his cultivation foundation would be improved again. Chu Zan did not know how many Dao principles the other Dao realm experts had comprehended, but 2 Dao principles was definitely not much. The ghost race had just been born, so they were still too weak. Their numbers were also too few. Chu Zan asked the Fengdu Ghost King to ensure that the ghost race cultivated diligently and increased their strength. Later on, the goal would be to strengthen the ghost race. The opening of the Asura ancient land was a turning point. The Great War back then had killed countless experts. In the Asura ancient land, there would be some muddle-headed remnant souls, or even the divine souls possessed by killing intent. Whether these remnant souls could be transformed into members of the ghost race or be directly devoured, they would serve to quickly increase the overall strength of the ghost race. Every day, countless cultivators died in the 9 zones. Many cultivators had their bodies destroyed, and only escaped with their divine souls. It was not easy to recover their bodies. There was a certain risk in using the possession technique. If the target was not talented, it would limit the ghost's own potential. The appearance of the ghost race would give cultivators who had their bodies destroyed, but still had their divine souls, a new choice. Many years later, when the cultivators of the 9 zones were hunted down and killed, they would shout this sentence. Even if I become a ghost, I won't let you go. Then, if their divine soul was lucky enough to escape, it would turn into a fierce ghost and come back to take revenge. Chu Zan looked forward to this scene. He looked forward to the growth of the ghost race. The infiltration of the Netherworld race was just a small incident. It did not affect the Chu family at all. No one in the Chu family knew that they were almost replaced by the Netherworld race. After transforming the Netherworld race into ghosts, Chu Zan continued to cultivate while looking forward to the 15-year milestone reward. Chu Zan continued to cultivate and accumulate his cultivation foundation while waiting for the 15-year milestone to arrive. He was also looking forward to the reward he would receive when Chu Pingfan broke through to the Emperor realm. Time flew by, and the 15-year milestone arrived. Chu Zan sighed. Time flew by really fast. In the blink of an eye, 15 years had gone by. After cultivating for 15 years, he had cultivated from the mortal realm to the 6th level of the divine realm. This kind of cultivation speed was enough to make everyone die of envy. Therefore, it was good to stay at home and steadily become stronger. Chapter 187, Chaos Dao Mirror, Mo 2. You've been in seclusion for 15 years, and your strength has increased tremendously. Please keep up the good work. Your Dao-seeking mirror has been upgraded to the Chaos Dao Mirror. The system reward for the 15-year milestone had arrived. Chu Zan was stunned. The 15-year milestone reward was just an upgrade to the Dao-seeking mirror. He checked the reward immediately. The Chaos Dao Mirror is an upgraded version of the Dao-seeking mirror. It has the ability to derive the secrets of heaven and the great Dao, search for Dao Yuan and ancient Dao experts, and obtain the information and appearance of the person being searched for. The Chaos Dao Mirror could also search for Dao realm experts and above. Furthermore, it had the ability to divine the information and appearance of the person being searched for. This ability, from Chu Zan's perspective, was perfect. In the future, when he found an expert, he would not need to probe the other party with questions for their information. He would directly obtain the identity, cultivation level, and appearance of the person being searched for from the Chaos Dao Mirror itself. Chu Zan also noticed that a new term had appeared in the system's description of the Chaos Dao Mirror. Ancient Dao experts. He already knew about Dao Yuan experts, but what was an ancient Dao expert? An expert who had opened more Dao paths or had tread upon those Dao paths for an even longer period of time. How long would it take before one could be called an ancient Dao expert? Even someone like Hong Yuanchu, who had opened 2 Dao paths, could not be called an ancient Dao expert. Chu Zan took out the Chaos Dao Mirror and examined it. There was not much difference between it and the Dao-seeking mirror. The only difference was that it was covered by an additional layer of chaotic aura. Let's give it a whirl and see how effective the upgraded Dao-seeking mirror is at finding experts. Chu Zan's divine power was injected into the Chaos Dao mirror. In an instant, he felt his divine power and divine soul power start to rapidly deplete. The stable Dao and the Yin Dao principles, as well as his Dao aura, also began to flow into the Chaos Dao mirror. The power consumption had more than doubled. Moreover, it took the initiative to absorb the power of his Dao principles too. Based on the current level of power consumption, Chu Zan could not sustain its activation for long. The compass needle on the mirror started to rotate. It turned round and round. Just as Chu Zan was about to collapse, a black dot appeared on the mirror. Following that, an image appeared on the surface of the mirror. An old man with scarlet hair and a beard sat atop a black stone bed. His entire body was surrounded by pitch-black Dao aura. Demon race. As soon the image appeared, the Chaos Dao mirror stopped absorbing divine power and the power of his Dao principles. The target's information was also displayed on the surface of the mirror. Mo Tu, an ancestor of the demon race and one of the ancient demons. This Daoyuan realm expert has already opened up nearly 2 Dao paths. It was a Daoyuan realm expert. Chu Zan was pleasantly surprised. The Chaos Dao mirror was indeed powerful. Although he was only using it for the first time, he had already found a Daoyuan realm expert. The Chaos Dao mirror also displayed an image of Mo Tu, but he did not sense it at all. From this, it could be seen how high the level of the Chaos Dao mirror was. Even a Daoyuan realm expert failed to sense that he was being spied on. Chu Zan stared at Mo Tu and fell into a state of deep thought. Chu Zan had caused trouble in the demon zone and turned the demons into Buddhists. He wanted to uproot the demon race. Mo Tu had reached the Daoyuan realm and was extremely powerful. However, on second thought, he remembered that Daoyuan realm experts were restricted from entering the 9 zones. Moreover, the other party might not even notice the changes happening to the demon race. Though Mo Tu could perceive the demon race's fate, this was not an accurate way of determining the actual situation. After transforming into a Buddhist race, the demon race's fate would transform and even increase explosively. Mo Tu, who was one of the ancestors of the demon race before the Buddhist race, would not be separated from that fate. He would still be able to feel it. Moreover, Hong Yuanchu was also a Daoyuan realm expert, and a human one to boot. Would he allow Mo Tu, a Daoyuan realm expert of the demon race, to cause trouble in the territory of the human race? With one more Daoyuan realm expert in the Great Dao Communication Group, the time until the Origin Dao Crystal's next transformation would be shortened. He would be one step closer to entering the Great Dao through the Origin Dao Crystal. Chu Zan did not greet Mo Tu and directly added a wisp of his Dao aura into the Origin Dao Crystal. In this way, he could also intimidate Mo Tu. As expected, Mo Tu's expression changed. "Who are you?" Mo Tu's expression changed drastically. His Dao aura had been unknowingly connected to something. He was even unable to track down the other party. "Let me introduce our newest member, Mo Tu, a demon race Daoyuan realm expert. Everyone, please get to know him," Chu Zan said in the group. Then, he said to Mo Tu, "This is the Great Dao Communication Group. Fellow Taoist Mo Tu was fated to enter this group. There are also a few Daoyuan realm fellow Taoists here. Mo Tu, the overlord of the demon race." Hong Yuanchu was the first to appear. The other Dao realm experts were all silently watching the group. Daoyuan realm experts were super big shots. It was not their turn to speak yet. Hong Yuanchu. Mo Tu quickly understood what was going on. He was shocked at how unpredictable and powerful this Great Dao Communication Group was. He became more fearful of Chu Zan, the group's leader. "That's right, you're here too. Are you plotting something?" Mo Tu said in a very irritable manner. "Plot? What plot?" Hong Yuanchu laughed lightly and said, "When did the overlord of the demon race become so timid? This is Taoist brother Chu's supreme treasure. Those who are fated will enter it. Who's afraid of you?" Mo Tu snorted coldly and said, "Back then, there was no victor between us. Could it be that you, Hong Yuanchu, want to fight with me now?" Chu Zan silently observed the group. Mo Tu and Hong Yuanchu were old acquaintances. Moreover, they had fought each other before. Hong Yuanchu chuckled and said, "What do you mean there was no victor? It was just a short fight. How can you, Mo Tu, be my match?" Then, he added, "Don't forget, your junior brother died at my hands." "Mo Tu, this boorish fellow, it's really strange that you managed to open a Dao path," Ruo Xian said with disdain. Goddess Ruo Xian, who chased you until you pissed your pants back then? Have you forgotten? Mo2, you're courting death. Come on, I'll strip you naked. Ruo Xian exploded in anger. Chuzan was speechless. Why did Mo2 sound like a troll? The moment he entered the group, he would scold whoever he saw. This made Ruo Xian, a Daoyuan realm expert, fly into a rage. Kun he also entered the fray. What a fellow! The Great Dao Communication Group instantly became lively. Mo2 fought verbally alone against Hong Yuanchu, Ruo Xian, and Kun he. He was not at a disadvantage at all. Chuzan even suspected that this fellow's Dao path was related to trolling. It could not be, right? The other Dao realm experts were all silently watching the group, especially Ying Kong, who was trembling once again. He was still the weakest in the group. In the end, Xu Yang could not help but enter the fray. He, Ruo Xian, and Mo2 were figures of the same generation, so they naturally knew each other well. In the end, the moment he entered the fray, he was spat on by Mo2 until he almost vomited blood. Xu Yang, you brat, where did you get the confidence to speak up? You're a piece of trash. You haven't even opened up a Dao path, yet you had the gall to speak up. I didn't think highly of you back then. You followed Hong Yuanchu like a grandson. As expected, you are trash, you can't even open a Dao path. Scram, Grandpa Mo2 won't bother with you. Chuzan sighed. This fellow, Mo2, was indeed not an ordinary trash talker. He was slandering people in the Great Dao Communication Group. Pulling Mo2 into the group was the right choice. The Daoyuan realm experts argued in the group, which required Dao aura. Everyone was excited, and their Dao auras surged into the origin Dao crystal, nourishing it. Therefore, it was important to make the Great Dao Communication Group active in order to speed up the upgrading of the origin Dao crystal. The more the group members communicated with each other, the more Dao aura they would expend, which would then be used to nourish the origin Dao crystal. As soon as Xu Yang appeared, he was suppressed by Mo2. He was so angry that he could not speak. Mo2 had hit him where it hurt the most. Mo, if you have the guts, tell me your location. Let's fight, Ruo Xian said furiously. Get lost, I'm not interested in a woman like you. Don't even think about seducing me. FCK, Ruo Xian was really about to explode in anger. Chapter 188, Mo2. Hong Yuanchu was also furious. Why did he not realize that Mo2 had such a trashy mouth? Taoist brother Chu, Mo2 is too impudent. Why don't we expel him? In the end, Hong Yuanchu sought out Chuzan. The members of the Great Dao Communication Group could not leave once they entered. Perhaps only Chuzan, the group leader, could expel them. The corners of Chuzan's mouth twitched. There was no way he was going to expel a troll like Mo2. The other party was a Daoyuan realm cultivator, and a troublemaker. One look was enough for anyone to tell that he would be a constantly active member of the group. In addition, with him in the group, it would be livelier. Only when one's Dao aura gushed out would he be able to obtain more Dao aura to nurture the origin Dao crystal. The losses from expelling him would be huge. Since Hong Yuanchu had spoken, he naturally could not refuse instinctively. He still had to give the other party some face and not allow any friction to appear in their relationship. Moreover, most of the current group members had been brought in by Hong Yuanchu. This could be considered to have helped Chuzan quite a bit. However, Chuzan needed to consider how best to reject him. Mo2 was somewhat fearful of this mysterious group leader. He was actually able to directly absorb a wisp of his Dao aura and pull him into the Great Dao Communication Group. His strength was definitely above his own. Since he had entered the group, how could Mo2 bear to leave? Hong Yuanchu and a few acquaintances were all here. When he was bored, he could trash talk them for fun. Without waiting for Chuzan's reply, he immediately said, Hong Yuanchu, you've become trash. Are you afraid of me? It's fine if you want me to leave the group. Just admit that you're not as good as me. Admit that you're afraid of arguing with me. Admit that you're avoiding me. As long as you admit to those facts, I'll leave immediately. Hong Yuanchu's face was livid with anger. How could he admit to such statements? He immediately replied angrily, fine. I'll just leave you in the group. I want to see what this violent dunce of a demon can do. Chuzan wanted to praise Mo2. As expected of a troll, he knew exactly how to provoke his enemies. Even though Hong Yuanchu knew that Mo2 was provoking him, he had no choice but to accept it. If he really expelled Mo2, would it not appear that he was afraid? Therefore, he could not expel Mo2. At this moment, Chu Zan opened his mouth. Fellow Taoists, since we are familiar with each other, there is no harm in causing a ruckus. The great Tao is all-encompassing. You might even inadvertently gain inspiration and new insights in the process. The moment he opened his mouth, he spoke with the tone of an old senior. Hong Yuanchu and the others fell silent. In their hearts, they were certain that Chu Zan was a senior and had opened the Tao path earlier than they did. His strength was naturally above theirs. Chu Zan continued, being able to enter the Great Tao Communication Group is, in itself, an opportunity. It can also be considered a kind of fate. In the future, all of you will know that those who can enter this group will have an opportunity. After speaking up to this point, Chu Zan continued to maintain his mysterious silence. Hong Yuanchu and the others did not argue anymore. They silently thought about the hidden meaning behind Chu Zan's words. Opportunity. The cultivation of Daoyuan realm experts lay in opening Tao paths and understanding the great Tao. What kind of opportunity would be useful to them? Even so, they did not doubt Chu Zan's words. Perhaps this person who had opened the Tao path ages ago would know about the opportunities that were useful to Daoyuan realm experts. The group became quiet. The Daoyuan realm experts did not quarrel for the time being. At this moment, the scum of the group, Ying Kong, came out. The first thing he did was to greet Mo Tu. Mo Tu was very happy. You little scum, you're very polite. Grandpa Mo Tu will take care of you from now on. Whoever dares to bully you, say my name. Ying. After all, there were not that many members. Ying Kong was the most active one in the group. He appeared to greet all of the big shots every day. Yu Su was more taciturn. It seemed that because of her identity as a member of the Netherworld race, she did not want to be noticed too much. Hu Tai and Ying Kong got along better. Chu Zan deactivated the Chaos Tao mirror to recover his energy and continued to cultivate. This was the first time he had used the Chaos Tao mirror, and he had found a Daoyuan realm expert. Chu Zan's confidence increased greatly. The chances of finding Tao realm and above experts would definitely increase. However, just as he said, those who could enter the Great Tao Communication Group were bound to have great luck and were considered fated. It was impossible for him to find all the Daoyuan realm and Tao realm experts. In the following days, Chu Zan used the Chaos Tao mirror to search once a day. However, because it consumed too much energy and he could not last long, he was unable to locate new Tao realm experts. Mo Tu was probably too bored, so he provoked Ruo Xian again in the group. Goddess Ruo Xian, when are you going to have a hand-to-hand battle with me? Ruo Xian became furious. As a result, the group became lively again. Chu Zan was happy to see this happen. The more they argued, the more Tao aura he would obtain to nurture the origin Tao crystal. In the following days, Mo Tu would provoke the Great Tao Communication Group once every few days. Most of the time, he would brag about himself to Ying Kong and Hu Tai. Time flew by, and Chu Pingfan was now 16 years old. He had already reached the peak of the truth realm, and the accumulation of his cultivation was sufficient. Yuer and Chu Pingfan were already very familiar with each other and had become very good playmates. The 16-year-old Chu Pingfan had grown into a simple and honest youth. His simple and dull temperament had not changed. Although he was handsome, he did not look like a clever youth. However, this was only on the surface. Anyone who really thought that Chu Pingfan was a simple and stupid fool would definitely suffer a great loss. Chu Zan could be said to have raised Chu Pingfan single-handedly. He personally taught and imparted all kinds of secret techniques to him. Chu Pingfan's body was so strong that, even before he entered the Emperor realm, he was already no weaker than a first or second level Emperor realm cultivator. He even ate medicinal pills as snacks. His toys were all kinds of Emperor-level artifacts and above. Demonic beast pets, zither playing, flute playing, and the other toys, were all at the Emperor level and above. All of them were refined by Shangxing. There were countless medicinal pills. In the past, Wang Luo had refined many medicinal pills for him. What he cultivated was the extreme Tao. No matter how many medicinal pills he ate, he would still use them to cultivate the extreme Tao. There would never be a problem of having too many medicinal pills or not being able to consume them. This was the uniqueness and power of the extreme Tao. After Yuer learned how to refine ghost pills, Chu Pingfan also got around to eating these cold and gloomy medicinal pills. They had a different taste. Chu Yun was also studying the Tao of alchemy. Many of the pills she refined were given to Chu Pingfan. In the entire 9 zones, there probably was no heavens blessed who could compare to Chu Pingfan in terms of resources. Now, Chu Pingfan was finally going to break through to the Emperor realm. A 16-year-old Emperor Realm Cultivator. Moreover, he was an extreme Dao Emperor Realm Cultivator. Chu Zan had high hopes for him. Whether or not he could obtain a big reward from the system depended on Chu Pingfan. This 16-year-old soon-to-be Emperor Realm Cultivator had never entered a time mystic realm, nor had he undergone any time flow accelerated cultivation. Instead, he cultivated little by little. It was enough to be recorded in the history books. Chu Zan believed that a 16-year-old Emperor Realm Cultivator was absolutely unheard of throughout history. Chapter 189. The 16-year-old Emperor Realm Cultivator, Absolute Beginning Dao Scripture. Chu Zan's had already reached the 9th level of the Divine Realm and was only one step away from breaking through to the Dao Realm. He only needed to reward a few hundred years' worth of cultivation to accumulate a sufficiently sturdy Divine Realm cultivation foundation. The next step was to break through to the Dao Realm. He already had 2 Dao principles, so there was no bottleneck for him to break through to the Dao Realm. 3 Dao Realm experts had been added to the Great Dao Communication Group. One was from the demon race, one was from a small and unknown race, and the last was from the human race. It was worth mentioning that Ying Kong was still at the bottom of the heap. He called every group member by some sort of honorific. Ying Kong doubted life every day. It seemed that anyone and everyone in this world was stronger than him. The new member from the demon race was called Mo Lu. His cultivation level had reached the 12th level of the Dao realm. Every day, he would flatter his ancestor, Mo Tu, in the group chat. Furthermore, he would belittle Hong Yuanchu and the others. Hong Yuanchu's disciples naturally had to stand up for their master. As such, they argued endlessly, and scolding battles would erupt almost every day. Mo Tu was very satisfied with this demon race junior of his. He was someone who followed Mo Tu's own style. Chu Zan was very excited. The more they cursed and fought, the more Dao aura would be expended. The more Dao aura he obtained, the shorter the period of time needed for the origin Dao crystal to transform would be. To him, Mo Tu was truly a lucky star. After the Dao-seeking mirror was upgraded to the Chaos Dao mirror, it was indeed powerful, and the number of group members had increased by quite a bit. It had also become lively. Chu Zan looked at Chu Pingfan, who was preparing to break through, with a look of anticipation on his face. What kind of rewards would he trigger from the system? Would he be able to break through to the Dao realm quickly? Chu Pingfan was the only one in the universe space. Yuer had already left. Chu Yun was in secluded cultivation. Su Shaner and the others were all in the pocket dimension. Only Chu Zan was there with Chu Pingfan, a 16-year-old Emperor Realm expert. If word of this got out, it would scare people to death. It was too shocking. Chu Pingfan's face was tense. The wooden saber was floating in front of him. It still looked like an ordinary wooden saber. Other than being a little polished, there was nothing special about it. The scenes from when he was young appeared in Chu Pingfan's mind again. He was about to break through to the Emperor realm. Soon, he could look down on those people and say, "In my eyes, all of you are not even as good as trash." He had been waiting for this day for a long time. He had worked hard to cultivate. Even though he was tempted and often wanted to play with the many new things he received, he restrained himself. Every time he recalled that scene, he would abandon all his distracting thoughts and focus on cultivating. He had a lot of puppets and toys, but he stored them away after playing with them once. He was afraid that he would not be able to control himself and would spend his time playing with them instead of cultivating. Although Emperor Realm experts were not considered strong outside the southern region, it was his first step to prove himself against those who had looked down upon him and his parents. Chu Pingfan spent a long time in thought before finally calming down. Breakthrough. His aura condensed around him, as if it was connected to the Great Dao. A power that was different from ordinary cultivators began to condense and build around him. Chu Zan watched on silently. The extreme Dao was special, and even required an extreme cultivation method. Because of this, the extreme Dao was difficult to cultivate, and it was rarely found in this world. All those who cultivated the extreme Dao had extraordinary strength and were stronger than ordinary cultivators in the same realm. Throughout history, there were very few extreme Dao practitioners. Chu Zan did not know if there were any extreme Dao practitioners who had reached the Dao Yuan realm. However, he did know that the Dao path opened by an extreme Dao practitioner would definitely be an extreme Dao. Chu Pingfan was in the midst of breaking through. An extreme Dao Emperor Realm expert did not possess the power of a domain, only the sublimation of the extreme Dao's power. In reality, it could be considered a special domain. The domain of the extreme Dao. Rumble. The aura around Chu Pingfan's body surged. A special, domain-like, extremely tyrannical power formed a special force field around his body. This was the special domain of the extreme Tao. Chu Pingfan had successfully broken through and was now consolidating his cultivation. The ordinary wooden saber seemed to have also undergone some changes. It still looked ordinary as usual, but Chu Zan sensed that there was a special power within the ordinary wooden saber. Perhaps it was a newly born extreme Tao. You remained in seclusion and taught the third ever 16-year-old Emperor Realm cultivator in history. You have been rewarded with 1,000 years worth of cultivation in the absolute beginning Tao scripture. You remained in seclusion and taught the first ever 16-year-old extreme Tao Emperor Realm cultivator in history. You have been rewarded with the destruction Tao principle. Chu Pingfan was the third 16-year-old Emperor Realm cultivator in history. And also the first 16-year-old Emperor Realm extreme Tao cultivator in history. The rewards were indeed generous. Chu Zan was overjoyed. After several years of careful teaching and guiding, he had finally gained his reward. The 1,000-year cultivation boost reward was enough to complete the accumulation of his cultivation foundation. The Tao realm was right in front of him now. He had even received another Tao principle as a reward. The destruction Tao principle. He was just about to enter the Tao realm, and yet had already grasped 3 Tao principles. He was unmatched in the same realm. Chu Zan did not receive the reward immediately. Instead, he waited for Chu Pingfan to consolidate his cultivation. 3 days later, Chu Pingfan stood in front of Chu Zan. Very good. You've already broken through to the Emperor realm. You're already 16 years old this year. You can enter the pocket dimension. Chu Zan looked at Chu Pingfan with a gratified expression. You've been cultivating since you started and, as such, don't have any combat experience. You can go to the Trial Mystic realm to gain more combat experience. Yes, 13th uncle. Chu Pingfan could not hide the excitement in his heart. All of this was created for him by his 13th uncle, Chu Zan. In Chu Pingfan's heart, 13th uncle held the most important position. Even his parents were not as important as him. After all, his parents had been forced to leave him when he was very young. He could be considered to have been brought up by Chu Zan and taught by him. In terms of feelings, he was even closer to Chu Zan than his parents, whom he had not seen for a long time. Yu leaned on Chu Pingfan's shoulder. Her body was illusory, and her gloomy and cold ghost spiritual power was restrained. Chu Pingfan and Yu entered the pocket dimension and immediately went over to the Trial Mystic realm. Only then did Chu Zan check the rewards. The first thing he looked at was the absolute beginning Tao scripture. This would be his cultivation technique from now on. The absolute beginning Tao scripture has been around since the beginning of the great Tao. It was born from primal chaos and started from nirvana. When the absolute beginning Tao scripture was cultivated to mastery, it could give birth to primal chaos and open up a true great Tao. Even if the great Tao was destroyed, it could still be reborn from nirvana and return. It was incomparably powerful. Once it was cultivated to mastery, no matter what kind of heavenly tribulation he faced, it could be overcome. It could be said that he was truly undying and eternal now. It had already far surpassed what Chu Zan knew of the Daoyuan realm. The Tao paths opened up by Daoyuan realm experts were also based on the great Tao. In contrast, when the absolute beginning Tao scripture was cultivated to mastery, it could separate from the great Tao and form another great Tao. It could be reborn from primal chaos and return from destruction through nirvana. Chu Zan was pleasantly surprised. After comprehending the absolute beginning Tao scripture, not only could he give guidance to Tao realm cultivators, he could even give guidance to Daoyuan realm cultivators. At that time, who would still doubt him? He would be a true super big shot. He would no longer have to worry about being exposed. He would no longer have to worry when Daoyuan realm cultivators like Hong Yuanchu looked for him to discuss the Tao. Once he cultivated the absolute beginning Tao scripture, he would be above all the Daoyuan realm experts and become a true super big shot. Chu Zan was extremely excited. However, he did not choose to receive the absolute beginning Tao scripture immediately. Instead, he received the 1,000-year cultivation boost reward to complete the accumulation of his cultivation foundation. Then, he used the absolute beginning Tao scripture to break through to the Tao realm. Chapter 190, Breaking Through to the Tao Realm. Chu Zan received the 1,000-year cultivation boost reward. Rumble. As power filled his body, his cultivation level continued to climb. The chaos indestructible physique crazily devoured the power, and his foundation grew stronger and stronger. At some point, he touched a bottleneck. His divine power began to transform, and a wisp of Tao aura appeared. It was as if he could sense the great Tao, and could absorb Tao aura to nourish himself and the Tao principles. Chu Zan opened his eyes. The opportunity to break through to the Tao realm had finally arrived. His cultivation foundation was complete. He had reached the limits of the divine realm. Then, he received the absolute beginning Tao scripture. The comprehension of the absolute beginning Tao scripture was instilled into him. Chu Zan activated the absolute beginning Tao scripture technique. A mysterious feeling arose in his heart. He was enlightened, and all sorts of insights filled his mind. It was as if he had pushed open a hazy window and seen the vastness and greatness of the outside world. It was like seeing the beauty of the world in the big blue sky and white clouds for the first time. The enlightenment continued. In a trance, it was as if he had approached the great Tao, or reached out and touched the great Tao. Endless insights continued to pour into his mind. The great Tao's Tao aura also poured in. Chu Zan's divine soul underwent further transformation. The chaos indestructible physique crazily absorbed the Tao aura. Under the nourishment of the Tao aura, the stable Tao and the Yin Tao principles also continued to grow stronger. The power of the Tao aura continued to fuse with his divine power. As soon as the divine power touched the great Tao's Tao aura, it was converted into his own Tao aura, which filled his entire body. The transformation of his divine soul would soon be completed as well. His connection with the great Tao would be established, and Tao aura could be absorbed into his body from the great Tao. Thus, he broke through to the Tao realm. Chu Zan's breakthrough continued. Meanwhile, his comprehension of the absolute beginning Tao scripture continued. This was the longest time Chu Zan had ever spent comprehending and the longest time he had ever needed to break through. Day after day passed. After a full 10 days, Chu Zan finally woke up from his state of comprehension. At this moment, his aura changed. His eyes seemed to be able to see through everything, as if he had already seen through the essence of the great Tao. His body was filled with Tao aura. The stable Tao and the Yin Tao principles revolved around him. He had completely mastered them. Tao power replaced divine power. Tao realm experts grasped the power of the Tao. They were above the laws of heaven and earth. In the eyes of Tao realm experts, the divine realm cultivators were just ants. Tao realm, success. Chu Zan sighed once he figured out that he was successful. After staying in seclusion for such a long time, he had finally broken through to the Tao realm. You broke through just by staying in seclusion. You became the fastest cultivator in history to break through to the Tao realm. You have been rewarded with the Time Tao principle and a soul journey through the great Tao. You broke through just by staying in seclusion. You became the youngest Tao realm cultivator in all of history. You have been rewarded with the concealment Tao principle and the myriad convergence Tao technique. Once he broke through, the system's reward soon followed. The fastest cultivator to break through to the Tao realm in all of history. The youngest Tao realm expert in all of history. He had set 2 records. Chu Zan's mentality was very stable even though he had gained 2 more Tao principles. He had just entered the Tao realm, but already had 5 Tao principles. This could be said to be unprecedented, right? He was not in a hurry to receive the system rewards after breaking through. He continued to carefully comprehend the mysteries he had after breaking through. Half a day later, Chu Zan first chose to receive the destruction Tao principle. A power that seemed to be able to destroy everything appeared and surrounded Chu Zan. After a long while, Chu Zan mastered the destruction Tao principle. The aura of destruction then disappeared. He returned to being an ordinary, handsome shut-in. Other than being handsome, there did not seem to be anything special about him. He did not have the aura of a strong expert or the aura of a tyrant. He was just an ordinary, handsome shut-in. Chu Zan's state of mind was greatly improved. After comprehending the absolute beginning Tao scripture, his understanding of the great Tao was probably unparalleled. Although his strength was far inferior to Tao Yuan realm experts, it was not difficult for him to guide them on the path of cultivating the great Tao. Chu Zan continued to examine the changes that his body had undergone. His state of mind was already very stable, even though the system's reward was very generous. You are a very stable shut-in, despite receiving great rewards. You have been rewarded with an upgrade to your stable Tao principle. Chu Zan was surprised. His state of mind was so stable that he actually triggered a system reward. The stable Tao principles upgrade would allow it surpass the yin and destruction Tao principles. Cultivation in the Tao realm was actually very simple, but it was also extremely difficult. The simple part was that one only needed to continuously comprehend the great Tao, continuously absorb Tao aura into one's body, and nurture the Tao principles, allowing the Tao principles to continuously improve and grow. The difficult part was also the comprehension of the great Tao and the perfection of one's Tao principles. Every breakthrough in the 36 levels of the Tao realm was a metamorphosis, a further perfection of one's Tao principles. The 36 levels were like 36 mountains. Every breakthrough provided an increase in the power of one's Tao principles, or allowed one to comprehend new Tao principles. Theoretically, each level could allow one to comprehend one Tao principle. However, most Tao realm warriors comprehended a single Tao principle and filled it with new comprehension and new power as they broke through. Continuously strengthening and perfecting that Tao principle. Perfecting one Tao principle and nurturing one Tao principle would allow it to grow rapidly. Naturally, it was much easier than perfecting and nurturing many Tao principles. The amount of insights required was also much less. Chu Xuan's Tao principles were actually relatively perfect. What he lacked was power. He did not lack insights. What he lacked was sufficient power to nurture and further improve his Tao principles. Compared to other Tao realm cultivators, Chu Xuan's Tao realm path was much smoother. Take the stable Tao principle for example. After it received a 1-level upgrade, it had already reached the level of the 2nd-level Tao realm cultivator. One level led to another. Breaking through each level was not easy and required a long period of time. Even if one had enough insights, it would take a long period of time to nurture and grow the Tao principles. Countless Tao realm experts had broken through to the Tao realm because of great opportunities or other factors. However, they were then stuck in the first level of the Tao realm and could not break through any further. For example, Xu Yong was an expert from the same generation as Hong Yuanchu, and was also his best friend. How could his level of talent be poor? However, he was stuck in the 30th level of the Tao realm and was unable to break through. Did Hong Yuanchu not try his best to help resolve his best friend's cultivation problems? Of course he did. However, when one reached the Tao realm, one had to rely more on oneself. Chu Xuan's Tao realm cultivation was naturally much simpler. However, he was not satisfied with this. Furthermore, nurturing the Tao principles and getting them to transform required a long period of time. If he wanted to shorten the time, there was only one way. He would have to obtain a great Tao treasure that was related to the growth of Tao principles. Or, he could enter the great Tao to gain enlightenment and nurture his Tao principles. It was impossible for ordinary Tao realm cultivators to do so, but no Chu Xuan. He could enter the great Tao to cultivate his Tao principles and gain insights into new ones. The prerequisite for all of this was that the origin Tao crystal needed to undergo another transformation, so that it would gain the ability to lead him into the great Tao. Chu Xuan continued to comprehend the changes. He even attempted to fuse the stable Tao, Yin Tao, and the destruction Tao principles. The Taoyuan realm was all about fusing one's Tao principles and opening up one's own Tao path. Aside from that, one could fuse one's Tao principles with the great Tao and open up one's own Tao path. Fusing many Tao principles would open up a stronger Tao path, which would be more stable and harder to crack. After continuously comprehending the changes for a month, Chu Xuan barely managed to fuse the 3 Tao principles together for a short period of time. Even so, if other Tao realm cultivators were to find out that someone who had just entered the Tao realm could fuse Tao principles, they would probably doubt their lives and break down crying, thinking that they were trash. Chapter 191. Can fellow Taoists come over to the great Tao of time for a gathering? Chu Xuan finally came back to his senses after a long time. Only then did he happily examine the system reward that had been triggered after the record was broken. First was the system reward for breaking through to the Tao realm the fastest. He had been rewarded with the Time Tao principle and a soul journey through the great Tao of time. This reward was very generous, especially the soul journey through the great Tao of time. Chu Xuan was filled with anticipation for this. The soul journey through the great Tao of time this time was different from the last time he traveled through the entire great Tao. Instead, he would travel through the great Tao of time. Chu Xuan was looking forward to traveling through the great Tao of time, and improving his time plunder and time illusion techniques, while also increasing his understanding of time. He might even be able to directly raise the cultivation level of the Time Tao principle. Including the Time Tao principle, Chu Xuan already had 4 Tao principles. If word of this got out, it would make a bunch of Tao realm experts envious. Next, he looked at the rewards he received for being the youngest Tao realm martial artist in history. The Concealment Tao principle and the Myriad Convergence Tao technique. He had received yet another Tao principle, bringing the total up to 5. The myriad convergence Tao technique was a cultivation technique that could absorb Tao principles from the great Tao into the body at an extremely fast speed. It could speed up the progress of cultivating Tao principles. Chu Zan was filled with anticipation for his newfound Tao realm cultivation path. He also wanted to break the record and become the fastest person to break through to the Daoyuan realm, as well as the record for being the youngest Daoyuan realm cultivator in history. The rewards at that time would definitely be even more generous. Chu Zan first received the 2 Tao principles. The time Tao principle was like a wave of light. It was extremely mysterious and difficult to comprehend. The concealment Tao principle was extremely inconspicuous and could not even be seen. The time Tao principle was an extremely powerful Tao principle. No one could truly control time. Even the Daoyuan realm cultivators could not do so. They could only interfere with time to a certain extent or use it to their advantage. The 5 Tao principles were stored in his body. Chu Zan was carefully comprehending them while simultaneously thinking about how to perfectly use the power of the 5 Tao principles. The concealment Tao principle could conceal one's body, while the time Tao principle could speed up one's body. The stable Tao principle provided stability to one's body, and the destruction and yin Tao principles allowed one's body to unleash explosive attacks. If he could use them in tandem perfectly, who in the same realm could withstand it? After being excited for a long while, he finally calmed down. Next, he received the myriad convergence Tao technique. After comprehending the myriad convergence Tao technique, Chu Zan attempted to use the myriad convergence Tao technique to absorb the great Tao's Tao aura into his body. His chaos indestructible physique was already extremely fast in terms of the speed and amount of Tao aura it could absorb. This was something that other Tao realm cultivators could not replicate. After activating the myriad convergence Tao technique, his body was like a whale swallowing, as Tao aura surged into his body. Thanks to the strength of the chaos indestructible physique, the endless stream of Tao aura could be absorbed, which nurtured his Tao principles while improving the chaos indestructible physique. Chu Zan could not help but sigh. The myriad convergence Tao technique was too powerful. Just by relying on this technique, he could nurture Tao principles and perfect them at a speed that was 10 times greater than other Tao realm cultivators. Tao aura surged in, but did not leak out at all. Chu Zan still looked ordinary. Even if one was beside him, they would not be able to sense the existence of the surging Tao aura. This was one of the strengths of the myriad convergence Tao technique. It was also a unique quality of the Tao aura. If it was directly absorbed into the body, it would not leak out unless the Tao aura was deliberately released. Only Tao realm cultivators could cultivate Tao aura. The divine realm merely allowed one to touch Tao aura and comprehend it. Moreover, divine realm cultivators could only touch a very small amount of it. Another characteristic of the myriad convergence Tao technique was that there was no need to deliberately cultivate it. The Tao aura would be absorbed into one's body automatically. Chu Zan waved his hand and took out the origin Tao crystal. Once again, when he went to travel through the great Tao of time, he also took the origin Tao crystal with him. Not only could he nurture the origin Tao crystal there, but if he encountered a Daoyuan realm expert, he could pull the other party into the great Tao communication group. Thinking of the time ship that the system had rewarded him with, Chu Zan also brought it with him. He also brought the Chaos Tao mirror. If he encountered a Daoyuan realm expert, he could deduce the other party's information. Everything was prepared. Filled with anticipation, Chu Zan received the reward. In an instant, a mysterious feeling surfaced. An inexplicable feeling that he could not understand appeared in his mind. In the next moment, Chu Zan realized that he had arrived above a shimmering river. It was like a vast and endless river of light that flowed continuously. Looking down, it looked like a stretch of light. A river formed by light. An extremely mysterious feeling kept surfacing in his heart. His comprehension of the time illusion and time plunder techniques were both improving. He now had a greater understanding of time. A shimmering ribbon surrounded Chu Zan. The time Tao principle. Chu Zan could sense that the time Tao principle was continuously improving. Holding the origin Tao crystal in his hand, Chu Zan lifted his feet and walked forward, step by step. The light under his feet seemed to be flowing. However, when he walked on it, it was hard to tell if it was flowing downstream or upstream. Moreover, Chu Zan had the feeling that no matter how or where he walked, he seemed to be stuck in the same place. Wait, that was not right. He was not in the same place, but moving extremely slowly. He walked step by step, and his walking speed was not slow. He did not know why he had the feeling of standing in the same place or moving extremely slowly. Could it be because he seemed to have walked very far and fast, but in reality, time had not passed as fast as it seemed. He turned around and headed back the way he came. He still could not tell if he was going with or against the current. It was as if the flowing light was but an illusion. Chu Zan was wandering aimlessly on the river of the great Tao of time, comprehending time and nurturing the time Tao principle. He had a feeling that the time Tao principle was about to level up. The current time Tao principle was not revealed outside of his body, but was instead being continuously nurtured inside his body. The origin Tao crystal emitted a hazy brilliance as it absorbed the power of time. However, time could not affect the origin Tao crystal in any way. It was not affected by time. Chu Zan stood on the river of the great Tao of time and stared at the origin Tao crystal. Suddenly, he was curious. Did Taoyuan experts like Hong Yuanchu step into the great Tao of time? Currently, he had stepped into the Tao realm. He was also cultivating the absolute beginning Tao scripture. In terms of understanding and comprehension of the great Tao, Hong Yuanchu and the others could not compare to him. Therefore, he did not have to worry about exposing his true cultivation level. As such, he took the initiative to speak in the group chat for the first time. He sent out invitations to those few Taoyuan realm experts. I am currently traveling on the river of the great Tao of time. Fellow Taoists, would you like to join me? There was no response in the group chat. Even the troll Mo2 did not respond. Chu Zan was puzzled. Although he was traveling through the great Tao of time, it did not delay the transmission of messages or operation of the chat group. Why was there no response? After a long while, Hong Yuanchu finally spoke. Fellow Taoist, are you on the river of the great Tao of time? Yes, fellow Taoist Hong, would you like to join me? Hong Yuanchu was very shocked. Just how strong was Taoist brother Chu? Why was he able to travel through the great Tao of time? This was the great Tao of time they were talking about here. Even he was unable to step into it. To be more precise, he was unable to enter the great Tao of time from the path of the great Tao. What he cultivated was not the Tao of time. The great Tao of time. Please forgive me, Taoist brother Chu. I have never comprehended the Tao of time, so I am unable to enter the great Tao of time through the great Tao. The group leader cultivates the great Tao of time. Mo2 also opened his mouth in shock. Chu Zan understood now. The great Tao of time was too powerful. Not everyone could cultivate it. Even if they were all Taoyuan realm experts, not everyone could enter the great Tao of time. Was the silence just because they were shocked? Chapter 192, Jade Time Dragon. After figuring it out, Chu Zan began to deceive the few Taoyuan realm experts, further solidifying his position as a senior. The great Tao of time is very easy to grasp. I walk the great Tao, and time is only one of them. Hong Yuanchu and the others were speechless. Who doesn't walk the great Tao? Wait, no, could it be that the great Tao mentioned by Taoist brother Chu was the kind that was on par with the true great Tao? Not a particular great Tao. Thinking this, they were extremely shocked. Too powerful. There was actually someone who was able to open up a miniature version of the great Tao. In addition, it was not a miniature version of a particular great Tao, but the great Tao in its entirety. No wonder he felt that cultivating the great Tao of time was not difficult. This was a super expert. I admire Taoist brother Chu's talent. I, Mo2, will not submit to anyone. Ruo Xian, that little b*tch, I can even press her under my body and rub against her. I will only submit to you, brother Chu. Mo2, you are courting death. Ruo Xian was so angry that her face turned red. Mo2, this b*starred, humiliated her the moment he opened his mouth. How hateful. Chu Zan said humbly, we are all seekers on the path of the great Tao. You flatter me, you flatter me. Just as he was about to continue, he suddenly saw dots of light on the river of time. A jade-white object flashed on the river of time. Chu Zan was shocked. There was a creature on the river of time. A creature appeared on the river of time. I'll talk to everyone later. He sent a message to the Great Tao communication group. Chu Zan immediately took out the time ship. Sitting on the time ship, he quickly rushed toward the location on the river of the Great Tao of time where that mysterious creature had appeared. He did not have the mood to pay attention to the messages in the group. Whether it was the Hong Yuanchu, or the other Taoyuan realm warriors, they were all shocked. There was a creature on the Great Tao of time. What kind of creature could live on the Great Tao of time? This was especially so for Hong Yuanchu and the others. Their expressions were solemn and their hearts were filled with shock. Even after opening their Tao paths for such a long time, they had never heard of any creatures on the Great Tao of Time. The Great Tao was truly mysterious. It was as if they would never be able to understand it. Chuzan was actually able to meet a creature on the Great Tao of Time. What did this mean? They called out a few times in the group chat, but there was no response. The Daoyuan realm experts could only patiently wait for Chuzan's message. Chuzan sat on the time ship and soon arrived at the place where that mysterious creature had disappeared in a flash. He looked around, but he could not find that mysterious figure. He was curious. Was that figure a creature from the Great Tao of Time or a Daoyuan realm expert who cultivated the Great Tao of Time? Based on his impression of the figure that had disappeared in a flash just now, Chuzan believed it to be a creature from the Great Tao of Time. He was very shocked. How could there be a creature in the Great Tao of Time? Was it a creature derived from the Great Tao of Time? Fellow Taoist, can you come out and meet me? Chuzan asked. Voila! In the distance, there was another flash of brilliance that looked like splashes of water. The time ship arrived there in an instant, but the figure was still nowhere to be seen. Chuzan took out the Chaos Tao mirror, trying to figure out what kind of creature it was. At this moment, several hundred meters away from him, a head popped out from the flowing river of light. Chuzan was stunned the moment he saw the head. Dragon. That's right, the head that popped out was very similar to how dragons from the legends looked like. The dragon's head was snow white, and it had equally snow white long beard and eyes. No pupils could be seen, only two snow white crystals could be seen where its eyes were. Controlling the time ship, Chuzan slowly approached and said, "Hello, fellow Taoist." At the same time, he pointed the Chaos Tao mirror at the dragon's head to deduce its information. After a while, the dragon's information appeared on the mirror. Huang Long, the Jade Time Dragon, a creature of the Great Tao of Time, a Daoyuan realm cultivator residing in the Great Tao of Time, the Jade Time Dragon will not die if time is not extinguished. Chuzan sucked in a breath of cold air. He had encountered an existence that was truly nearly immortal. As long as time was not destroyed, the Jade Time Dragon would not die. Would time be destroyed? Chuzan did not think that time would be destroyed. Even if the Great Tao collapsed and returned to chaos, time might not completely cease to exist. A creature of the Great Tao of Time. Since there were creatures on the Great Tao of Time, it meant that there were actually creatures on the Great Tao itself. It was just that they were extremely rare or difficult to meet. You're a little strange, Huang Long spoke. He tilted his head and looked at Chuzan curiously, especially at his time ship. Logically speaking, the Jade Time Dragon should be invincible on the Great Tao of Time. However, for some reason, he had a feeling that the mysterious ship would be able to ensnare him. My name is Chuzan. How should I address you, fellow Taoist? Although he already knew the name of the Jade Time Dragon, Chuzan pretended not to know it and tried to approach Huang Long in a friendly manner. This was a super big shot. He was much more powerful than Hong Yuanshu and Mo Tu. This was a creature of the Great Tao. As long as time was not destroyed, the Jade Time Dragon would not die. My name is Huang Long. Huang Long's snow-white dragon body appeared. He laid lazily on the river of the Great Tao of Time and looked at Chuzan curiously. He felt that this person was very extraordinary. Fellow Taoist Huang, you are a creature of the Great Tao. This is my first time meeting one. Chuzan had a curious look on his face. There's nothing good about being a creature of the Great Tao. They have nowhere to play. It's very boring, Huang Long sighed. Chuzan instantly caught a hint of something. First, it was very likely that Huang Long had never left the Great Tao. Perhaps he was restricted. Or perhaps, in fact, he did not know how to leave the Great Tao. Secondly, Huang Long was simple-minded and was not shrewd in any way. He was easy to deceive. Fellow Taoist Huang, you must be joking. The creatures of the Great Tao are eternal. It can be said that the Great Tao is eternal and immortal. How can ordinary cultivators compare to such creatures? Chuzan said with a smile. He looked like a kind and talkative person. Really, it's very boring here. Huang Long stretched out a claw and stroked his dragon whiskers. I spend most of my time sleeping. That's impossible. Haven't you met anyone else, fellow Taoist Huang? Chuzan pretended to be surprised. I haven't met anyone on the Great Tao of Time. The Dragon Lord held his dragon claw and said, You're the first person I've met on the Great Tao of Time, and the fifth person I've met in my lifetime. Chuzan instantly understood that the Dragon Lord had not met any Daoyuan realm experts on the Great Tao of Time. It was very likely that there were no Daoyuan realm experts on the Great Tao of Time. Huang Long had left the Great Tao of Time and met Daoyuan realm experts in other places of the Great Tao. Chu Zan was thinking about a question. If there were creatures on the Great Tao of Time, did other creatures also exist elsewhere in the Great Tao? The Great Tao was invisible, and the Great Tao of Time was only a part of it. So few people, Chu Zan asked curiously, fellow Taoist Huang, you're not the only creature in the Great Tao. Don't you discuss the Tao with the others? Huang Long stroked his dragon beard and sighed. It's very difficult to meet them. Besides, everyone is bored. What's there to discuss? Got it. As expected, Huang Long was not the only creature in the Great Tao. Moreover, they were all bored and had no interest in talking with each other. It was also extremely difficult to meet them. This also showed how rare the creatures of the Great Tao were. Fellow Taoist Dragon Lord, you can leave the Great Tao to play. Why do you have to stay in the Great Tao and be bored? Chu Zan asked the main question that had been bugging him. Why could the creatures of the Great Tao not leave the Great Tao? Chapter 193, The Generous Huang Long. Huang Long grabbed his dragon's whiskers with his dragon claws, looking a little frustrated and helpless. How do I leave? There's no way out. What if I get lost? Besides, I feel uncomfortable leaving the Great Tao. In short, it's very annoying. Chu Zan roughly understood from Huang Long's words why he had been staying in the Great Tao all this time. Firstly, he did not know how to leave the Great Tao. He could not find a way to leave the Great Tao, and was also afraid that he would get lost. Second, after leaving the Great Tao, he would feel a little uncomfortable. How uncomfortable? Chu Zan could not help but think of the situation when a fish left the water. Why would it be uncomfortable to leave the Great Tao? Chu Zan asked directly out of curiosity. After all, Huang Long was simple-minded and not shrewd at all. He was easy prey when it came to fishing for information. There was nothing wrong with asking him questions directly. It's just a little uncomfortable, but it's not a big problem. Huang Long thought for a moment before saying, I have a feeling that if I leave for too long, I'll be summoned back. Got it. Even though he would feel uncomfortable after leaving the Great Tao, it would not affect him much. Furthermore, after leaving for a certain period of time, he would be summoned back by the Great Tao. The key point was that he did not know how to leave the Great Tao. Of course, Chu Zan would not help the Jade Time Dragon leave. If he went to the 9 zones, given Huang Long's strength, who would be able to subdue him? With such a terrifying existence present in the 9 zones, even Chu Zan's residence would not be safe. Could it be that fellow Taoist Huang Long is the only one on the Great Tao of Time? Yes, it's only me here. Huang Long nodded. At this point, he raised his head and said smugly, I, Huang Long, am unique. Chu Zan praised him a little, and Huang Long became very excited. Because he was happy, he gave Chu Zan a treasure. He raised his hand and gave Chu Zan a scale. The jade-white crystal-like scale contained the mysterious patterns of time. It was a supreme treasure. Chu Zan pretended to be reticent and said that he only had that one treasure, so there was no need for Huang Long to give him such a valuable gift. After hearing what he said, Huang Long raised his claw again and took out more than 10 scales and a few other treasures. Without any explanation, he stuffed them into Chu Zan's hands. He wanted to show Chu Zan that he had many treasures. Huang Long was a truly good person. Chu Zan happily took them. Since Huang Long was so generous, he was definitely going to make friends with him. Of course, Chu Zan would not be stingy either. Huang Long was bored, right? He would not be bored if he was dragged into the Great Tao communication group. As for helping Huang Long to leave the Great Tao and wander about outside, Chu Zan was not capable of it for the time being. Even if he could, he would not let Huang Long leave just yet. Fellow Taoist Huang Long, it's fate that we have met here. From now on, you and I are best friends. Chu Zan said very sincerely, in the future, when I find a way for you to leave the Great Tao, I will definitely help you leave. Thank you so much, fellow Taoist Chu. Huang Long was overjoyed. He rolled a few times on the river of the Great Tao of Time and said, fellow Taoist Chu, from now on, you are my best friend. If you have any difficulties, feel free to come to me. You're too kind. Chu Zan was very satisfied with Huang Long's attitude. Then, he said, although I can't help you leave for the time being, I have a treasure that can allow you to chat with others. In this way, you can also take this opportunity to relieve your boredom. Oh, is that so? Quick, let me chat with the others. Huang Long was extremely excited and full of anticipation. Whenever he was excited, he liked to give out treasures. Hence, he stuffed more treasures into Chuzon's hands. How generous! Chuzon sighed. As a creature of the great Tao, Huanglong really had many treasures. Moreover, they were all at the great Tao level. Not to mention Tao realm experts, even Taoyuan realm experts would covet these treasures. Chuzon felt that it was necessary for him to remind Huanglong, who liked to give out treasures a little too much, that he should not be fooled by others. He would deceive Huanglong himself. If he was deceived by others, the treasures that the Dragon Lord gave away would be akin to Huanglong giving away what rightly belonged to Chuzon. Fellow Taoist Huanglong, the outside world is complicated and full of deceit. You must not reveal all your secrets. You must not give away treasures at will. Treasures like these are very precious. People will fight over just one of these treasures, so you must not give away treasures at will. Chuzon reminded Huanglong about succumbing to flattery and not giving away treasures as he pleased. Huanglong nodded repeatedly. He felt that fellow Taoist Chu was a really good person. Had it been anyone else, would they have reminded him like this? Fellow Taoist Chu, don't worry. I definitely won't be deceived by others, and I won't give away treasures as I please. If I'm happy, I'll just give you some trinkets. Then, Huanglong looked at Chuzon's timeship and said, You're different, fellow Taoist Chu. Your treasures are too rare, and you definitely don't lack treasures. That's why I'm giving these things to you to express my joy. Chuzon was speechless. It turned out that Huanglong was not really giving away treasures casually. He was just picky about who he gave them to. The level of his timeship was too high, so he had been too embarrassed to give away low-level treasures. Therefore, he gave away great Tao-level treasures right away. Chuzon was relieved. He took out a ball of Tao aura from the origin Tao crystal. He handed it to Huanglong and said, Fellow Taoist Huang, if you meet other people in the future, or other great Tao creatures, you can also use this to absorb a wisp of their Tao aura and connect them to the supreme treasure. After that, you will be able to communicate with them. He asked Huanglong to input a wisp of his Tao aura into the origin Tao crystal. Chuzon looked at the messages in the Great Tao Communication Group, smiled, and said, Fellow Taoists, let me introduce you to fellow Taoist Huanglong of the Great Tao. The hearts of Hong Yuanchu and the others were shaken. A creature of the Great Tao. The other Tao realm cultivators were all shocked, and they stared at the Great Tao Communication Group with fervent eyes. Hello, everyone, I'm Huanglong. Once Huanglong figured out the message transmission method, he directly condensed the message onto a scale, and his little claws scratched out a message onto it. He also discovered that he could use his Tao aura to condense an image projection and transmit it to the group. He directly condensed his own appearance and transmitted it to the group. Huanglong was extremely excited about this new and strange toy. He rolled on the river of the Great Tao of Time, creating waves. In his excitement, he also stuffed some treasures into Chuzon's hands. Chuzon was also very happy. This trip to the Great Tao of Time could be said to have yielded a bountiful harvest. Moreover, if Huanglong encountered other creatures of the Great Tao, he would be able to pull them into the Great Tao Communication Group. If necessary, he would let other creatures of the Great Tao give him treasures after entering the group. Those creatures of the Great Tao were all lonely and bored. They needed a place to chat and would beg to enter. Chuzon vaguely reminded Huanglong not to suffer a loss when pulling people into the group. Huanglong understood and sighed with emotion. Fellow Taoist Chu was really a good person. He felt bad for accepting so many treasures from him, so he reminded himself that he could take the opportunity to ask for some treasures when inviting someone to join the group. He had to remind those who joined the group that they had to give fellow Taoist Chu treasures. Chuzon saw that the Dragon Lord was completely focused on the group chat, and he himself was also ready to continue touring the Great Tao of Time. In the Great Tao Communication Group, he added another explanation to properly introduce Huanglong. His message shocked everyone. Fellow Taoist Huanglong is the Jade Time Dragon. As long as time exists, the Jade Time Dragon will never die. If you have any questions regarding time, you can ask fellow Taoist Huanglong for advice. Chapter 194. Have you learned it? Everyone in the Great Tao Communication Group was shocked once again. This was especially so for the few Taoyuan realm experts present in the group. If time existed, the Jade Time Dragon would not die. What did this mean? It meant that Huanglong was an existence that was nearly eternal. This was a true big shot. Huanglong raised his head and glanced at Chuzon. At this moment, he felt that Chuzon was somewhat mysterious and very powerful. Since he knew that as long as time existed, he would not die, then he had to be an ancient powerhouse. He happily chatted in the group. Fellow Taoist Chu, you flatter me. I'm not that powerful, it's just that even if the great Tao collapses, I'll still be alive. Hong Yuanchu and the others were speechless. If the great Tao collapsed and you were still alive, was that not powerful enough? None of the Daoyuan realm experts could guarantee that they would be able to survive when the great Tao collapsed. This was the difference. Fellow Taoist Chu is the true senior. Huang Long praised Chu Zan again. In this way, Chu Zan's status in the group increased once again, making him seem even more mysterious. Mo Tu, this troll, was now trying to curry favor with Huang Long. The other Tao realm cultivators all came out to flatter him as well. This included Yu Su, who usually rarely spoke. Chu Zan was very satisfied with the activity in the chat group. It was indeed the correct decision to pull Huang Long into the group. When he returned, he would activate the item transfer function. In this way, the group would become even more active. When Huang Long gave out treasures, it would stimulate the group members to be even further. In this way, the Origin Tao crystal would be able to obtain more Tao aura, and the time until its next transformation would be further shortened. Huang Long became addicted to chatting in the group and could not extricate himself. He felt good whenever he was flattered, and wanted to give away treasures each time. Unfortunately, he could not transfer treasures to his group chat friends. It was really too regrettable. Of course, he still remembered Chu Zan's reminder that he could not randomly give away treasures, and that he should not be addicted to flattery. However, he had countless treasures, so it did not matter if he gave away some low-level ones. In his eyes, they were low-level ones, but in the eyes of others, they were precious treasures. Among the Tao realm experts in the Great Tao Communication Group, Ying Kong was the most diligent in flattering him. After all, he was the weakest in the group. If he did not try his best to flatter them, and gain the favor of the big shots, and get them to give him pointers on cultivation, what was the point of being in this group? Slow cultivation, time acceleration and time flow differences. Ying Kong wanted to cry but had no tears. If I could speed up time for myself and change the time flow difference, would I still be so useless? He was in the Tao realm. Those so-called time mystic realms were no longer effective for him. He was not cultivating the Tao of time, so where would he get the ability to use accelerated time to increase his cultivation speed? Senior, I can't do it. Ying Kong cried. It's very simple, I'll teach you. Huang Long began to teach Ying Kong how to use time in the Great Tao Communication Group. Everyone watched attentively. This was a time secret technique. Have you learned it, Ying Kong? Number, I'll repeat it again. Have you learned it now? Ying Kong, I'm useless. The others. Although Huang Long explained as simply as possible, the Tao realm cultivators could not understand it at all. They all looked confused. Only a few Daoyuan realm warriors gained some understanding of the technique. Forget it, I'll give you a time acceleration treasure when the time comes. Huang Long was helpless. He could not even learn such a simple technique. He was really useless. Ying Kong banged his head against the wall as tears streamed down his face. He was really useless. He was actually unable to comprehend such a profound time secret technique. Chu Zan continued to tour the Great Tao of Time for a short while before he felt the pull that signaled his impending return. By the time his trance ended, he had already returned to the small courtyard. His body was shimmering with waves of light as the power of time swirled around him. It was as if he was floating in the river of time. The Tao of Time in the Origin Tao crystal had also been upgraded. Now, when he changed the time flow difference in the pocket dimension, the power of the laws of heaven and earth consumed would be reduced. However, Chu Zan had no intention of changing the time flow difference in the pocket dimension. At this moment, he was immersed in a state of profound epiphany. The Tao of Time was extremely powerful. Until now, there was no one who had opened the Tao path of time. Otherwise, as a creature of the Great Tao of Time, it was impossible for Huang Long to not have met such a person. This state of epiphany lasted for half a month. Meanwhile, the Time Tao principle had also successfully advanced by one level. Chu Zan had also reached an extremely high level in terms of his comprehension of time. He had a premonition that, once his Tao realm cultivation was perfected, he would be able to become the first person to open up the Tao path of time. Chu Zan's goal was not to open up the Tao path of time. He wanted to open up the path to the true Great Tao, and time was only a part of it. He glanced at the Great Tao Communication Group and saw that it was still bustling with activity. A group of Tao realm cultivators were flattering Huang Long, which made the latter very excited. A few Dao realm disciples from the Hong Yuanchu's side also occasionally came out to interact with Huang Long. Occasionally, Huang Long would give some pointers on the Dao of time. After Huang Long joined the group, Mo Tir did not continue to mess with Ruo Xian for fun. It was time to activate the item transfer function. Chu Zan waved his hand and picked some Dao fruits from the pocket dimension. He then instructed Su Shaner to cook some delicious dishes with the highest level ingredients. Huang Long had given him so many treasures, so he wanted to make some delicious food for him to taste. This was a long-term relationship worth nurturing. When Su Shaner received his instructions, she began to prepare the ingredients. Chu Zan recalled that Huang Long was a jade time dragon. Such a big and powerful dragon would have a terrifyingly big appetite. Thus, he ordered Su Shaner to cook 10 times more than usual. "Sir, why do you need me to cook so much food?" Su Shaner asked in puzzlement. "Just do as I say." Okay. While Su Shaner was busy, Chu Zan took out one of the scales Huang Long had given him. The snow-white scale had mysterious time patterns on it and was imbued with the power of time. The palm-sized scale was beautiful and full of mystery. These were the scales that Huang Long had shed. After some treatment, they had become like this. This was a natural time treasure. Constructing a time mystic realm with this would be a piece of cake. A time mystic realm constructed using this treasure would be equivalent to a great Dao mystic realm. After all, Huang Long was a creature of the great Dao, and his scales would naturally be of the great Dao level. Chu Zan waved his hand and began to refine a time treasure with the scales. Even with his Dao realm strength, and his excellent level of artifact refining, as well the assistance of the origin Dao crystal, it would take a long time to refine the scales. He took out a bracelet. There were 9 beads on it in total, and each one was crystal clear, with patterns of the great Dao of time on them. Besides the time patterns, there was also another great Dao power imbued into it. The bracelet was one of the treasures given to him by Huang Long, who had nothing better to do, so he made it and put it on his dragon finger to play with. They were all supreme treasures. Even Dao realm experts would be envious of this bracelet. Chu Zan wiped his hand and concealed the bracelet's Dao aura so that it looked ordinary, other than it being somewhat beautiful. Su Shaner brought the delicacies over. "Sir, it's ready." Chu Zan waved his hand and put the delicacies into a box. The level of the box was no lower than the bracelet. The box was also a small gift from Huang Long. From these small items, it could be seen how bored Huang Long was to have made these small items for entertainment. Chapter 195, Bootlicker. Su Shaner looked at Chu Zan and put the delicacies into the box. She asked doubtfully, "Sir, who are you giving this to?" These delicacies were made of high-grade heavenly treasures. Even emperors were not qualified to eat them. When she cooked, she even gained a lot from just the fragrance of the dishes. Those who were qualified to eat such delicacies should at least be at the early stages of the heaven realm, right? Maybe even heaven realm cultivators were not qualified to enjoy these delicacies. Moreover, the box used to hold the delicacies was extraordinary. It was even more extraordinary than divine treasures. Su Shaner did not dare to imagine what kind of treasure this was. However, this treasure was actually used to hold food. "It's for a friend I just met," Chu Zan said with a smile. Su Shaner was even more confused. Chu Zan had never left the courtyard, right? When did he meet a new friend? Chu Zan put the Dao fruits into the box and put the bracelet on Su Shaner's wrist. He said, "This is for you. Use your aura to nourish it for a period of time. No one can take it away." Su Shaner looked at the jade bracelet on her wrist. It looked crystal clear and had some fine lines on it, but there was nothing special about it. However, she knew that the things Chu Zan gave her were never ordinary. The more ordinary they looked, the more precious they were. It was just that, with her limited strength, she was still unable to discover what was special about them. "Thank you, sir." Chu Zan nodded and allowed Su Shaner to go about her own business. In the Great Dao Communication Group, he said to Huang Long, "Fellow Taoist Huang, I'll give you some food to satisfy your appetite." Huang Long was delighted. There was something new to eat. "Fellow Taoist Chu, are you coming to the Great Dao of Time again?" "No, I'll transfer the item to you through the Great Dao Communication Group." As Chu Zan spoke, he transferred the box over. Although Huang Long was on the Great Dao of Time, it did not hinder the ability of the Origin Source Dao Crystal to transfer items. This was one of the strengths of the Origin Dao Crystal. It was directly connected to the Great Dao. "Taoist Brother Chu, you can transfer items through the Great Dao Communication Group?" Hong Yuanchu asked in shock. He could directly use a wisp of Dao aura as a medium to transfer items over. Could it be used to attack? Items can be transmitted, and the transmitted items will have their original owner's aura erased, and it will be branded with the recipient's aura. Moreover, it won't reveal any traces of your location or heavenly secrets. Since it involves the Great Tao, fellow Taoists won't have to worry about attacks or anything like that. Chu Zan naturally knew what Hong Yuanchu and the others were afraid of. The Great Tao Communication Group has rules. As long as one has not surpassed the Great Tao, one cannot override the rules. Hong Yuanchu and the others heaved a sigh of relief when they heard him speak. They felt that they had been overly worried just now. They were all Daoyuan realm cultivators. How could Chu Zan be so powerful that he could attack those in the same realm with just a wisp of his Dao aura as a medium? If he could really launch such an attack, would he not be close to surpassing the Great Tao? Huang Long had already received the food. As he ate, he sent a message. Delicious, delicious. I've never eaten such delicious food. Ying Kong instantly seized the opportunity and hurriedly took out some heavenly treasures like Dao fruits that tasted especially good. He quickly figured out how to transmit items through the Great Tao Communication Group. He immediately said to Huang Long, "Senior Huang Long, I'm weak, but I have some delicious fruits. I'll send them to Senior Huang Long now. I hope that Senior likes them." It was a good opportunity to flatter him. He immediately transferred the items over. The other Dao realm members looked at him. Ying Kong, this flatterer, was too fast. They also quickly expressed that they had delicious food. Other than food, they could not bring out any treasures that could tempt Huang Long. Even if they did, they could not bear to part with any treasure that could tempt Huang Long. Hong Yuanchu and the others only gave some items of the same level to Huang Long as a way of befriending him. They did not fawn over him like the juniors. "You know your place well, little fellow." Huang Long was very satisfied with Ying Kong. His words were pleasant and tactful. He deserved a reward. He casually gave Ying Kong a small disc that he had made himself. "I'll give you a small disc that can accelerate time. It will allow your strength to increase by leaps and bounds." "Thank you, Senior." Ying Kong was so excited that he was on the verge of tears. He had finally obtained a great opportunity and a supreme treasure. A supreme treasure that could accelerate time even for Dao realm cultivators was almost impossible to find within this world. The other Dao realm members were all envious. They cursed Ying Kong for being a bootlicker. There are also gifts for all the other little fellows. Huang Long was in a great mood. He casually transferred some small items to each of them. Although they could not be compared to the time acceleration disc, they were still treasures for Dao realm cultivators. He remembered Chu Zan's words. He could not give away treasures that were too precious. As for Ying Kong, it was mainly because he had a pleasant tone and was tactful. He was also the first one to give him food after Chu Zan. Moreover, his strength was really too weak. He could not bear to see him that weak. He was the weakest in the group. As the second most powerful group member, after fellow Taoist Chu, it was only right for him to take care of the weaker group members. Chu Zan was speechless. He knew that Huang Long would give things to others when he activated the item transfer function. Ying Kong was the first to enter the group, but had now become a sycophant. Being able to enter the group could be considered a fortuitous encounter for him. He would probably be able to break through to the 4th level of the Dao realm. That was good as well. Since Ying Kong had benefited, it would motivate the other Dao realm group members to work even harder to curry favor with Huang Long. The group became active once more. It would not be long before the origin Dao crystal transformed again, which would allow Chu Zan to reap even greater benefits. Once the origin Dao crystal transformed, and gained the ability to transport him into the Great Dao, Chu Zan's path of Dao realm cultivation would be faster and smoother. In the future, it would be much easier for him to open up a smaller version of the Great Dao. After breaking through to the Dao realm, Chu Zan had nothing to do. He did not need to cultivate the myriad convergence Dao technique, as it automatically absorbed Dao aura into his body to nurture his Dao principles. He only needed to spend some time comprehending the Dao principles to increase his understanding of the Dao principles. With more free time, Chu Zan focused his thoughts elsewhere. It was time to push forward the Heavenly Dao Talisman plan. At the same time, he was also thinking about how he could upgrade the Heavenly Dao Talisman. Currently, the Heavenly Dao Talisman only controlled all of the transmitted information and had not formed its own laws of heaven and earth. Chu Zan's next goal was to upgrade the Heavenly Dao Talisman, evolving its laws of heaven and earth to the point where it could control some of the laws that covered the northern zone. To do this, he would start from the southern region. Taking advantage of the fact that the laws of heaven and earth in the southern region had not completely recovered, the laws of heaven and earth formed by the heavenly Tao talisman could take advantage of the situation and control part of the laws of heaven and earth in the southern region. Once the plan was completed, and the northern zone's laws of heaven and earth were controlled by the heavenly Tao talisman, Chuzan would become the ruler of all the cultivators in the northern zone. One had to know that even heaven realm cultivators were subject to the laws of heaven and earth. If the heavenly Tao talisman replaced the current laws of heaven and earth, it meant that the cultivators would have to cultivate the laws that Chuzan had set. Chuzan would become the master of the heavenly Tao, and he could use the establishment of the heavenly Tao to perfect his own Tao principles and open up a true great Tao path. At that time, he would definitely surpass the current Taoyuan realm experts and become an existence on par with the great Tao. He would even transcend the great Tao. This was a big plan. To complete this plan, there were many steps that had to be taken. First of all, he had to have a large number of children of fate under his command. Chapter 196, Chuping Fan heads to the eastern region. Chuzan felt that he should take in a few more children of fate. At the end of this Taoyuan, there would definitely be changes in the world. It was a good time to lay out a plan. Every region and zone had its own child of fate, and he wanted to control as many of them as possible. After breaking through to the Tao realm, Chuzan was truly filled with confidence. It was also time for him to take complete control of the Black Moon Tower. Up until now, he still did not know who the person behind the scenes was or how strong the other party was. Chuzan was prepared to speed up the plan and drag out the mastermind behind the Black Moon Tower. The other party might be a talent that could be used. After all, for that person to be able to establish a large faction that spanned the entirety of the northern zone, regardless of whether it was in terms of strength or methods, they had to be extraordinary. The heavenly Tao talisman plan was in need of such a talent. The mastermind behind the Black Moon Tower was extremely well hidden. It would probably take some time to fish the other party out. Chuzan called Bao Hongyan over. He asked her to come up with a plan. This could be considered a test of her ability. While Bao Hongyan was excited, she was also a little worried. She was afraid that she would not be able to pass the test. Ever since she had followed Chuzan, she had received a lot of attention. There were too many benefits, and her strength had skyrocketed. The way the Black Moon Tower operates is very complex. Each department has its own secrets, and each department has its own subordinates. If you want to find the real mastermind, you can only control them level by level. I don't think there is a better way. At the moment, the Tower Lord occupies a very important position in the system of the Black Moon Tower, and only the top section of the guard department has enough power to challenge the Tower Lord. Perhaps a 9-star Tower Lord will know the mastermind and be able to contact him. Bao Hongyan spoke of her own opinions and analysis. Chuzan nodded. Other than controlling each department level by level, there was indeed no good way. After all, he could not leave the courtyard and personally make a move. Even though the communication talisman had been released for quite some time, he had not received a single piece of information about the Black Moon Tower's mastermind. It could be seen how deep the other party had hidden themselves. It was as if they were indifferent to the huge changes taking place in the Black Moon Tower. They had the demeanor of a powerful expert. Chuzan condensed a ball of Tao power and had Bao Hongyan bring it with her. She would search for traces and uncover the mastermind of the Black Moon Tower by taking things step by step. After making the arrangements, Chuzan waited in the courtyard for news. On this day, Chuping Fan came out of the pocket dimension. Yuer naturally followed him everywhere. The two of them had become very good playmates. Chuping Fan was already at the 3rd level of the Emperor realm. Although not much time had passed in reality, he had been training in the pocket dimension for a few years. He had become much calmer. Perhaps it was because he was born this way, but Chuping Fan still looked simple and dull, but he was rather cute. He was also a rather straightforward person. It really suited his temperament. 13th uncle, I want to make a trip to the eastern region, Chuping Fan said respectfully. Chuzan glanced at him and said, have you thought about it? This day would have come sooner or later. The reason why Chuping Fan cultivated so hard was so that he could vent his anger and frustration about what had happened to him and his parents. He really wanted to go to the eastern region to save his parents and deliver a devastating blow to his mother's family who had treated them like trash. A 3rd-level Emperor Realm cultivator was not considered weak. An ordinary 9th-level Emperor Realm cultivator would probably not be a match for Chuping Fan. More importantly, he was only 16 years old. I've thought it through, Chu Pingfan said with clenched fists. Up until now, he could not forget that scene from when he was young. If you've thought it through, then go do it. Chu Zan nodded. Thank you, 13th uncle. Remember, there's no need to pay attention to the identity or background of the other party. Kill them if you have to. Of course, don't be bloodthirsty. Chu Zan said solemnly. Yes, 13th uncle, I know what I should do. Chu Zan nodded. This child, Chu Pingfan, was still very simple-minded. Yuer poked her head out from behind Chu Pingfan's shoulder and said timidly, Great-grandfather, I want to go too. Chu Zan looked at this female ghost, who was as cute as a pixie, as she called him great-grandfather, and the corners of his mouth could not help but twitch. However, he was the ghost ancestor, and the founder of the ghost race, so there was nothing wrong with her calling him great-grandfather. Go. Yay. Thank you, great-grandfather. Yuer was very excited and floated around Chu Pingfan. Chu Zan still held Yuer in high regard. She was currently the #1 genius of the ghost race. Her talent was very compatible with the ancient netherworld scripture. In the future, she would be the one to lead the ghost race to rise up and fight for the fate treasures. Chu Pingfan was about to embark on a long journey, so Chu Yun came out of secluded cultivation and refined a bunch of medicinal pills for Chu Pingfan to take with him. Shang Xing refined quite a number of secret treasures with formations engraved on them. The lowest level one was an emperor-level secret treasure, which was his latest creation. Although a secret treasure could only be used once, its power was extremely strong. Su Shaner realized that she actually had nothing to give him. Chu Yun had given him pills. Shang Xing had given him artifacts and secret treasures. What was she going to give him? That was very depressing. She had been taking care of Chu Pingfan since he was young. She loved Chu Pingfan very much. After thinking for a while, Su Shaner picked a few of the heavenly treasures that she had been given and gave them to Chu Pingfan. These are all good treasures. They can be used at critical moments. Thank you, Aunt Su. Before Chu Pingfan left, he kowtowed 3 times heavily to Chu Zan. His eyes were red as he walked out of the courtyard resolutely. This was the first time he had truly left. The last time, he had only gone for an excursion with the sky-shaking golden rock and the heavenly spirit cat. This time, he was leaving to seek justice for himself and his parents. Chu Yun and Su Shaner went to send him off. Shang Xing stood at the entrance of the courtyard, sighing incessantly. He often thought about returning to the southern zone's eastern region to show off his abilities and tell everyone there that he was a genius and not a monster. He let out a sigh of pent-up anger. Chu Zan sat on the reclining chair and said, Shang Xing. Yes, master, Shang Xing responded respectfully. Work hard in your cultivation. The time will come when you will return home in glory. However, the time is not yet right. Yes, master, Shang Xing regained his fighting spirit. Chu Zan looked into the distance. Chu Pingfan's trip would definitely stir up a storm and bring about countless waves. A tree that stood out in the forest would definitely be destroyed by the wind. This was especially so for his mother's family. They did not have a good impression of him. Perhaps the other party would feel that Chu Pingfan was a hidden threat and try to get rid of him. Moreover, it would not be long before the Asura ancient land opened. Some of the people behind the scenes were probably already prepared to take action. For example, the human divine realm expert and the divine realm demon race elder. Once they discovered Chu Pingfan's shocking talent, in order to ensure that their plan would not be ruined, they would probably think of ways to kill Chu Pingfan before he could develop into a greater threat. Chu a figure appeared in front of Chu Zan. Master, Chu Yi and Chu had been cultivating beside the Origin Dao Crystal and receiving the nourishment of the Origin Dao Crystal. Their strength had increased explosively. They had completed their metamorphosis and could no longer be called soul puppets. Their current strength had already reached the 7th level of the divine realm. More importantly, although Chu Yi and Chu were only at the 7th level of the divine realm, they still possessed Dao aura within them. During critical moments, they could use the Dao aura to unleash powerful attacks. Even 9th level divine realm experts would have to retreat when this happened. Go and follow the Chu Pingfan secretly. Yes, my lord. Chu Er's figure disappeared in a flash. Shang Xing was shocked. His master had such a powerful servant. Was that person a heaven realm or divine realm expert? Chapter 197, Fate Transformation, Holy Child of the Earth Spirits. Chu Zan looked at the dazed Shang Xing and said, cultivate well. The divine realm is not the end of the road. Yes, master. Shang Xing returned to the pocket dimension full of fighting spirit. Chu Zan pondered when he would let Shangxing return to the southern zone's eastern region. Perhaps after the Asura ancient land opened. A son of fate could not stay sheltered forever. He had to go out and adventure. Ding Yu and Wang Luo had not triggered any system rewards for a while. Was it because they had not messed around enough? Or was it because the conditions for triggering a reward had increased now that he had broken through to the Dao realm? Chu Yun and Su Shaner returned. Chu Zan casually waved his hand, and another time-scale bracelet was completed. He gave it to Chu Yun. Thank you, 13th brother. Chu Yun put on the bracelet and was elated. She now knew that the things that Chu Zan had given her were not ordinary. This bracelet was snow white and had fine lines and patterns. There seemed to be nothing special about it. However, it was precisely because of this that she knew that it was extraordinary. Chu Yun stayed in the courtyard for a while before returning to the ancestral residence to give pointers to the Chu family's pill refinement team. In the Chu family, Chu Yun was practically the main family decision-maker. No one would go against her words. Even Chu Tianming heeded her words, as he spoiled this precious granddaughter of his. It had been a long time since Chu Zan had heard Chu Tianming's roar. It seemed that the development of the Chu family was going very smoothly, and there was nothing bothering him. Chu Zan thought for a moment and decided not to anger old man Chu Tianming. He did not really want to make this grandfather of his explode with anger. It had been half a month since Chu Pingfan left for the eastern region. As Chu Zan was curious, he took out the heaven spying mirror as he wanted to see how far Chu Pingfan had traveled in his journey to the eastern region. The system's reward suddenly came out of nowhere. Your disciple Ding Yu entered the secret realm of the earth spirits by mistake and was crowned the holy child of the earth spirits. His fate transformed. You have been rewarded with the earth creation scripture. Chu Zan was stunned. Ding Yu had triggered the system's reward. He had entered the secret realm of the earth spirits by mistake. The earth spirit race was an unfamiliar race. Chu Zan had never heard of them before. Moreover, Ding Yu was crowned as the holy child of the earth spirits. He was not in a hurry to receive the reward. He immediately activated the heaven spying mirror and connected it to Ding Yu. The image projection appeared. Amidst the myriad colors around him, Ding Yu wore a snow-white hat on his head and held a treasured sword in his hand. The spirit of the earth vein was seated on his shoulder. At this moment, he was sitting on a chair, which was formed from ancient vines and flowers. Fresh flowers surrounded Ding Yu. Every flower was a spirit herb, and the weakest one was at the spirit grade. Below Ding Yu stood a few dozen people. Chu Zan discovered that the ears of these people were different from those of the human race, and their bodies were smaller. There were actually flowers growing on their heads. At the end of every braid of hair on their heads was a blooming flower. Each flower's color was different. Chu Zan could even sense the aura of nature from these people. This was the earth spirit race. Were they some kind of plant born in human form? Chu Zan was very curious as to how Ding Yu became the holy child of the earth spirits. Ding Yu looked at the earth spirits below and inwardly felt very helpless. All he had done was secretly eat a few fruits. Moreover, he triggered some strange phenomena. How did he become the holy child of the earth spirits? It was all the spirit of the earth vein's fault for bringing him to this place and even encouraging him to steal food. The spirit of the earth vein was seated on Ding Yu's shoulder. It felt maligned. It was clearly its master who was greedy, yet it had somehow been made to take the blame. Ding Yu did not know what the earth spirit race was. At the very least, they were people that he could not afford to offend at the moment. The holy child of the earth spirits, at least for now, such a title was beneficial and harmless. He was also revered by the earth spirit race. Although the earth spirits were few in number, their strength was not weak. There was one divine realm elder, 5 heaven realm experts, and the rest of the earth spirits were in the supreme realm or the emperor realm. There was no one among them that had not reached the emperor realm. They were a very powerful force. Elder, does the earth spirit race have a sword Dao inheritance? The elder of the earth spirit race, who was leaning on his cane, nodded and said, yes, yes. Our earth spirit race once had a sword Dao genius ancestor who left the earth spirit sword Dao behind. Ding Yu was overjoyed when he heard this. Quickly bring me there. Holy child, please follow me. The elder brought Ding Yu with him as he walked toward the place. Ding Yu followed behind the elder and looked around. There were spirit herbs all over the ground, and there were countless spirit fruits that tasted sweet. What a treasured land! Before he left, he had to take some of these with him. After he returned, Wang Luo would no longer have to worry about his supply of spirit herbs to refine pills. Ding Yu was thinking about what excuse he could use to leave, as well as what excuse he could use to take some of the stuff here with him. The Earth Spirit race was too powerful. If he were to brazenly try and steal their treasures, it would probably end badly. He was not sure if his newfound identity as the holy child of the Earth Spirits would ensure his safety. Ding Yu had always felt that the process of him being recognized as the holy child of the Earth Spirits was a bit of a joke. He was a human, how did he become the holy child of the Earth Spirits? Moreover, they even said that it was ordained by the ancestor of the Earth Spirits. Ding Yu suspected that there was a conspiracy. He followed the elder and arrived in front of a towering ancient tree. Ding Yu looked up and saw an ancient tree that was tens of thousands of feet tall. On it hung fruits the size of a human head. They emitted a faint fluorescent light. Gulp, Ding Yu felt a little greedy. Ever since he had eaten the spirit fruits here, he had been obsessed with spirit fruits. The fruits on such an ancient tree must be of a very high level. They had to be very delicious. He wondered if he, as the holy child of the Earth Spirits, would be allowed to eat one or two of those. The spirit of the Earth Vein was also swallowing its saliva. Holy child, that is the Earth Spirit Sword Tao. The elder stopped in front of something. Ding Yu came back to his senses and looked over. There was a statue standing beneath the ancient tree. The statue depicted a handsome man who was holding a sword in his hand. The sword was emitting a lustrous light and was surrounded by the shadow of a flower. Ding Yu could tell at a glance that it was extraordinary. Holy child, you can sit 3 feet in front of the ancestor's statue and sincerely call on the ancestor. You will definitely gain something. The elder made a gesture of invitation. Ding Yu muttered in his heart, there wasn't going to be any danger, right? It was not appropriate for him to voice this question out directly. He figured that since he was the holy child of the Earth Spirits, that there should not be any danger. Thus, he cautiously approached. After taking a few steps, he arrived 3 feet in front of the statue. Chuzan stared at the statue of the Earth Spirit ancestor. The statue was surrounded by a faint Tao aura. The Earth Spirit's ancestor had been a Tao realm expert. However, he did not know what level this person had reached, or whether or not he was still alive. Ding Yu was able to become the holy child of the Earth Spirits because of his fate. The primary reason behind this was probably related to the spirit of the Earth Vein. Chuzan even suspected that the founder of the Earth Spirit race was most likely a spirit of some ancient Earth Vein. This was because the spirit of the Earth Vein recognized Ding Yu as its master. Perhaps the ancestor had sensed Ding Yu's fate and hoped that he would be able to lead the Earth Spirit race to rise up again. Was that why they crowned him as their holy child? Ding Yu was now 3 feet away from the statue. Suddenly, the statue seemed to come to life. Its eyes opened and shone. The sword in its hand blossomed with flower petals. Strands of spiritual power burst forth, instantly sealing Ding Yu inside. An intense sense of crisis instantly enveloped him. Ding Yu's expression changed greatly, and he cursed in his heart. There was indeed danger. He was a human, how could he become the holy child of the Earth Spirits? He did not have the bloodline of the Earth Spirits. At the critical moment, Ding Yu reacted quickly, raising his hand to grab something. Chapter 198, Earth Creation Scripture. The statue's sword was pointed at Ding Yu. Its aura sealed off the surroundings. The elder did not know what was happening inside. Seeing the strange phenomenon taking place around the statue, the elder became even more certain that Ding Yu was the holy child of the Earth Spirits and had received the approval of the ancestor. He would definitely be able to lead the race back to prominence in the 9 zones. The elder was filled with anticipation for the future of the Earth Spirit race. At this moment, Ding Yu reacted immediately in the face of danger. He raised his hand and grabbed the spirit of the Earth Vein. He grabbed the spirit of the Earth Vein by the neck. The spirit of the Earth Vein was almost choked. If I die, he will die. If you threaten me again, I will strangle him to death. Ding Yu stared at the statue and sneered. The spirit of Earth Vein. I was blind to have recognized such a master. The spirit of the Earth Vein was on the verge of despair. How could it have recognized such an unreliable master? The statue was also stunned. What kind of scene was playing out here? The aura sealing Ding Yu started to chaotically fluctuate. Don't think that you can kill me in an instant. Even if you kill me, it will still die. Ding Yu continued to sneer. He was not afraid at all. The statue fell silent, and it lowered its sword. A soul fluctuation transmitted a message. It's just a test. Why do you want to strangle it? You are the holy child. Do you think that I will actually hurt you? Ding Yu, was this a misunderstanding? It could not be. He had sensed the danger just now. Don't you know, I am a human, why would you acknowledge me as a holy child? Don't even think about lying to me. Ding Yu believed that he had seen through everything. From his perspective, the real holy child was the spirit of the earth vein. However, the spirit of the earth vein had acknowledged him as its master. That was why the ancestor had crowned him as the holy child instead. As long as he killed him, the spirit of the earth vein would be free, and it would naturally be able to be crowned the holy child of the earth spirits. Since you share weal and woe with him, you are naturally the holy child. The holy children of my race have always been human. The statue was also on the verge of frustration. No matter how he looked at it, there was something wrong with this holy child. Ding Yu was stunned. The holy children were always humans. What about it? He pointed at the spirit of the earth vein and asked. Holy Lord. Ding Yu was instantly displeased. This won't do. It is the Holy Lord, and I am the holy child. Doesn't that mean that it is my master? This has always been the rule. The statue was also a little angry. No, how can I be of lower status than it? I'm the master. Ding Yu said unhappily. Seeing that the statue's aura was beginning to boil, he exerted force with his hand and squeezed the spirit of the earth vein's neck. Don't threaten me, otherwise, if I kill him, you won't have a holy lord anymore. Conditions, give me conditions. The statue was furious. At the same time, it was also angry with the spirit of earth vein. How could it choose such a person? Are you not tired of following such a person? How embarrassing. All of the previous generations of holy children had shared weal and woe with the spirit of earth vein. They had shared life and death with the spirit of earth vein. If you have conditions, we can talk about it. Ding Yu let go of the spirit of the earth vein and allowed it to breathe. He did not want to strangle it to death. The spirit of the earth vein had a bitter look on its face. After a round of bargaining, the conditions were successfully met. Ding Yu obtained the inheritance of the earth spirit sword Dao and a powerful sword Dao. He left the statue and returned to his residence. The spirit of the earth vein said, "You strangled me too hard. 30% is too little. I want 40%. 35%. No more than that." The spirit of the earth vein cursed in its heart. Its master was 2FC King Evil. Chu Zan was speechless. Ding Yu was indeed the son of fate, but his heart was too evil. He closed the heaven-spying mirror and did not continue to pry into his disciples' affairs. Ding Yu would not die. He examined the system reward. The earth creation scripture has the power to manipulate the earth. It can open up land on the Great Tao to form one's own territory. After reading the description of the earth creation scripture, Chu Zan was pleasantly surprised. It was a precious treasure. What did it mean to be able to open up land on the Great Tao? It meant that he could open up his own territory directly on the Great Tao. Chu Zan received the reward. The earth creation scripture was an ancient and simple manual which exuded an ancient and heavy aura. On the cover of the book, there were 3 words that looked like ancient seals, which read, "Open up land." Each page contained the power of earth creation, and it could open up an area of land. Chu Zan held the earth creation scripture in his hand and sensed the heavy aura within. He flipped open one page. It was as if a piece of land had appeared before his eyes. He reached out and brushed the page, and a stream of earth creation power surged into the pocket dimension. Rumble. The power of earth creation exploded. In the blink of an eye, a new area was opened up at the border of the world in the pocket dimension. Chu Zan was shocked beyond words. The earth creation scripture was too powerful. He had no doubt that if he were in the primal chaos, he would definitely be able to create a continent with the earth creation scripture. This was a true supreme treasure. Chu Zan even suspected that the earth creation scripture was no weaker than the chaos bell. He would be able to use the earth creation scripture to gain a foothold on the Great Tao in the future when he could enter the Great Tao through the origin Tao crystal. Even if a Tao realm cultivator entered the Great Tao by chance, they would not be able to stay for long. They would be expelled by the Great Tao after some time. However, with the earth creation scripture, things would be different. Chu Zan would be able to gain a foothold on the Great Tao. With that foothold, he would be able to stay on the Great Tao for a long time. He could even divide his divine soul and allow that portion of his divine soul to stay on the Great Tao indefinitely. He would then be able to constantly comprehend the Great Tao, and nurture and perfect his Tao principles. That portion of his divine soul could be connected to his main body through the origin Tao crystal, and he would be able to transfer his consciousness over to it at any time. It was just like how he had personally journeyed through the Great Tao. After realizing the power of the earth creation scripture, Chu Zan began to think about his future cultivation on the Great Tao. There were almost no shortcuts to Dao realm cultivation. In addition to his own innate comprehension talent, he also needed time to absorb the Dao aura and nurture his Dao principles. After nurturing and perfecting one's Dao principles, one would eventually reach the Dao Yuan realm. During this process, no matter how talented a person was, they would have to continuously comprehend the great Dao. They would also need a long period of time to nurture their Dao principles. Chu Zan cultivated the myriad convergence Dao technique and the chaos indestructible physique. The speed at which he absorbed Dao aura was so fast that he would leave ordinary Dao realm cultivators in the dust. Even so, if he wanted to quickly increase his cultivation base, he would need a long period of accumulation. Chu Zan was currently unable to estimate how long it would take for him to break through from the first level of the Dao realm to the second level of the Dao realm. He had no lack of insights, and it was relatively easy for him to perfect his Dao principles. However, it would take time for him to nurture his Dao principles. Furthermore, the Dao path that Chu Zan wanted to open was one of the true great Dao. The difficulty for this was even greater, and he needed to master even more Dao principles. If he could stay on the great Dao, then his cultivation would increase by leaps and bounds. Being able to comprehend more Dao principles and open up a smaller version of the great Dao path would also be much easier. It could be said that the appearance of the earth creation scripture had resolved one of Chu Zan's problems. Chu Zan stored the earth creation scripture into his divine soul and nourished it together with the chaos bell. That fellow Ding Yu was still working hard. As expected of his first disciple, he had triggered such a precious reward for Chu Zan. As expected, a child of fate should be allowed to roam freely outside. Only then would there be a greater chance of triggering the system's reward. Chu Zan began to look forward to Wang Luo, Demon Buddha, and Hu Tianya's performances. Xiao Liang also had to work harder. Ever since he became Chu Zan's disciple, he had not triggered the system's reward. Chapter 199, Ghostly Possession. Chu Zan took out the Chaos Dao Mirror and began to search for Dao Realm experts. There were still relatively few members in the Great Dao Communication Group. It would be more lively if there were more people. When the group became lively, the Origin Dao Crystal would obtain more Dao Aura and transform faster. The system's reward suddenly arrived. The Little Evil King, who entered your lucky mystic realm by mistake, has broken through to the Emperor realm. You have been rewarded with a cluster of Dao Aura. Huh, Chu Zan was stunned. He had almost forgotten about the Little Evil King. This guy had broken through to the Emperor realm. With his cultivation speed, there was now hope for him to take revenge. Moreover, the system did not reward him with a cultivation boost, but a cluster of Dao Aura. A cluster of Dao Aura was not considered a small amount. It was equivalent to Chu Zan absorbing Dao Aura for half a month. He hoped that the Little Evil King would be able to bring him further surprises. Unfortunately, he did not find any Dao Realm experts using the Chaos Dao Mirror, so he could only put it away regretfully. He decided to use the Chaos Dao Mirror once a day. Eastern Region. Compared to the Southern Region, the Eastern Region was more prosperous. The laws of heaven and earth here were perfect, the spiritual energy was abundant, and cultivation flourished. Unlike the Southern Region, which was mostly barren, the Eastern Region was filled with sects, factions, and empires. It had been a few days since Chu Pingfan arrived in the Eastern Region. He had been going around asking about his mother's family. The Ji family, a powerful family in the Eastern Region. They were based in the central county of the Eastern Region, which was the most prosperous in the entire region. Having come from the barren Southern Region to the prosperous Eastern Region, all sorts of new things attracted Chu Pingfan's attention. Moreover, scams were not rare here. Chu Pingfan and Yuer were newbies who had just entered the cultivation world. They were muddle-headed and had been duped several times. In the end, they relied on their strength to solve the problem. Strength was indeed the foundation of everything. Yuer was curious about everything. She even used the ghost possession technique several times to control some cultivators to cause destruction. If she did not like someone, she would create a ghostly wall and have them go around in circles. Chu Pingfan headed toward the central county of the region. His target was the Ji family. He looked dull and ordinary. There was a wooden saber hanging from his waist. No matter how one looked at him, he was just an ordinary person. He did not look smart and was easily fooled. He did not look like a rich person either. As a result, very few people paid him any attention. Even if someone did, they were the type who wanted to trick him into doing hard labor. Yuer was a ghost. If she did not reveal herself, ordinary cultivators would not be able to detect her presence. Chu Pingfan had always kept a low profile to avoid unnecessary trouble. He understood that he should not reveal his possessions. He tried his best not to attract attention. However, even if he kept a low profile, there would always be people who would target him. Hey, this kid looks silly and strong. He should be an easy target. When Chu Pingfan passed by a small city, he was targeted by a few ruffians. They were only mortals, but judging from the clothes they wore, they probably belonged to some faction. Chu Pingfan's facial expression darkened. He had kept such a low profile, yet he still ended up attracting trouble. Could it be that he was born with a face that seemed easy to bully? Yuer was even more furious. They actually said that Pingfan is stupid. This is too much. I want them to discover how terrifying ghosts are. A few ruffians were about to try and take Chu Pingfan away when they suddenly felt their bodies turn cold. It was as if something terrifying was staring at them. They could not help but shiver. Go to hell. A beautiful figure suddenly appeared and sent those few hooligans flying. The evil fiend gang is getting more and more outrageous. They are even targeting ordinary people now. The one who took action was a pretty woman. She was at the 3rd level of the truth realm. Chu Pingfan was stunned for a moment. He looked at the young woman and did not know if he should thank her. After all, the other party had helped him out of the kindness of their heart. However, he did not need her help. So, he was conflicted. In this situation, should he thank her or not? Hey, dummy, I saved you. Shouldn't you say thank you? Yu Bebe clapped her hands. When she saw the dazed Chu Pingfan, she was a little displeased. However, when she saw Chu Pingfan's simple and honest look, she decided not to be calculative. She waved her hand and said, "Forget it, I won't be calculative with you." Chu Pingfan was extremely angry. "You're the dummy. Hey, you're still not convinced. Believe it or not, I'll beat you until your head swells like a pig." Yu Bebe clenched her fists and threatened. "I can't be bothered with you." Chu Pingfan ignored her. "Dummy, you're so weak. Aren't you afraid of death? You're even running around. Hey, you dummy, you're actually ignoring me." Yu Bebe waved her hand, and a whip appeared in her hand. She raised the whip, wanting to whip him, but stopped. "Forget it, you're just an ordinary person. If I whip you, you'll be split in half. Then I would have saved you in vain." Just as she was about to turn around and leave, she suddenly heard an angry female voice beside Chu Pingfan. "You're the dummy." Before she could react, she felt her entire body turn cold. It was as if something had entered her body. Then, she lost control of her body. Yu Bebe was shocked. Her eyes widened. She wanted to ask for help, but she could not say a word. However, her mind was clear. She looked at her body as it ran over to Chu Pingfan's side in excitement. She even reached out and grabbed that dummy's arm. Chu Pingfan pulled his hand away and glared at Yuer. "Stop fooling around." Yu Bebe was horrified to discover that she had opened her mouth to speak. One of her hands was even clutching her chest, as if she was about to unbutton her shirt. The words that came out of her mouth frightened her even more. Fan, do you want to take a look at her body? Why don't I take off her clothes and let you admire her?" Yuer had an evil smile on her face. No, don't do it in public." Yu Bebe was extremely terrified, and her heart kept roaring. She wanted to ask for help, but she was unable to do so. Chu Pingfan's facial expression darkened. He raised his hand, wanting to poke Yuer's forehead. However, seeing that she was now in Yu Bebe's body, he could only pull his hand back. He said unhappily, "Don't mess around. Stop fooling around and get out of her body. She called you a dummy. I want to give her some punishment. She should lend me her body for 3 days." Yuer snorted. She then asked Yu Bebe, "Hey, what's your name?" Yu Bebe realized that she could now speak. The first thing she wanted to do was ask for help, but to her shock, she realized that as long as she wanted to ask for help, she would immediately be unable to speak. It was as if the unknown existence in her body could read her mind. I'm Yu Bebe. I'm from the Yu family." At this moment, she could only hope that by bringing out her family name, she could intimidate the other party. "Yu family." Chu Pingfan looked at her in surprise and said, "Is it the same Yu family that is one of the 3 great families of the eastern region?" Yes, I am the 3rd young miss of the Yu family, Yu Bebe said hurriedly. Chapter 200. Chu Pingfan waved his hand to kill an Emperor realm expert. Yu Bebe had just revealed her identity when the unknown existence in her body spoke up. Fan, she's the young miss of the Yu family. Why don't you sleep with her? That way, you'll be half a member of the Yu family." Yu Bebe was scared out of her wits when she heard that. Chu Pingfan said snappily, "What are you thinking about? She's just an old lady. How could I take a fancy to her?" Yu Bebe was furious. "Me, an old lady? Stupid dummy, who are you calling an old lady? You're about the same age as my Aunt Yun and Aunt Sue. You're much older than me. If you're not an old lady, then what are you?" Chu Pingfan said righteously. Yu Bebe was left speechless. Yu had completely controlled her again. Let her go. What's the point of possessing the body of an old lady like her? I won't. It's her fault for calling you a dummy. If you admit that you're a dummy, then I'll let her go. Chu Pingfan shut his mouth. He was not a dummy. Thus, on the surface, Yu Bebe and Chu Pingfan were traveling together, but in reality, Yu was still accompanying Chu Pingfan. They headed all the way to the central county of the eastern region. Chu Pingfan wanted to trample all of the so-called elites of the Ji family under his feet. He wanted to tell that person that the so-called geniuses of the Ji family were trash. 3 days later, on the third day after Yu possessed Yu Bebe, they were only 10,000 li away from the central county. This distance was not very far for an Emperor Realm cultivator to cover. Chu Pingfan and Yu did not walk very fast. Along the way, they learned about the local customs of the eastern region and the situation in the cultivation world. It's been 3 days. Let the old lady go, Chu Pingfan said. Yu Bebe was so angry that she was about to go crazy. This dummy kept calling her an old lady. It was unbearable. After the initial fear of losing control of her body passed, Yu Bebe was no longer afraid. This unknown woman who had controlled her body did not do anything to harm her. Yu Bebe was very curious. What kind of method did the other party use to control her body? The woman actually seemed to be inside her body. Such a method was simply unheard of. Fan, are you really not going to sleep with her? She might be getting up there in age, but she's still quite good looking. Yu controlled Yu Bebe and struck a pose. Stop fooling around. Right at this moment, a voice suddenly rang out. Yu family's lass, come with this old man. A figure suddenly appeared. This person had 2 twisted scars on his face and wore a black robe. He exuded an aura of evil. He was a 5th level Emperor Realm cultivator. Half of Yu's body came out from Yu Bebe's body. She looked at the black-robed old man and said, Fan, should we save her? Chu Pingfan thought for a moment and said, last time, she helped us drive away the flies. We'll help her this time, then we won't owe her a favor. Yu nodded. It made sense. Yu Bebe was so scared that her face turned pale. After she regained control of her body, she called for help. Granny Fan, come and save me. However, there was no reply. Little girl from the Yu family, stop screaming and surrender obediently. The black-robed elder sneered as he approached step by step. Chu Pingfan held the hilt of the wooden saber in his hand. He looked at the black-robed elder and said, 13th uncle told me that all mentally retarded villains die from talking too much. If you talk so much, you won't live long. The black-robed elder became extremely angry. Yu Bebe was stunned. You're really a dummy. He's an Emperor Realm expert. From her perspective, Chu Pingfan was at most at the peak of the mortal realm, and that unknown woman could only deal with people at her own level of cultivation. Faced with an Emperor Realm expert, both would die without a doubt. Granny Fan, who was usually secretly protecting her, was missing. If the other party wanted to capture her alive, they would not kill her. This silly boy was definitely going to die. Little brat, go to hell. The black-robed elder raised his hand and waved it. The palm condensed from spiritual power tried to slap Chu Pingfan. He was merely immortal, and could be destroyed with just one breath. Crack, it was as if a world-shaking sharp aura had been unleashed. The palm condensed from spiritual power shattered. One of the black-robed elder's arms was completely severed. The black-robed elder was greatly shocked. Chu Pingfan held the wooden saber and looked at Yo. Should we kill him? Will there be any trouble if we kill him? I hate trouble. Kill him. If we don't kill him, we'll always be worried about his revenge. It'll be even more troublesome then. Yu thought for a moment and said, we can avoid trouble by getting rid of the corpse and destroying the evidence. I'll control his soul, extract it, and refine it into soul materials. Yu Bebe was dumbfounded. She stared blankly as she listened to the conversation between Chu Pingfan and Yu. The black-robed elder was also stunned for a moment. Then, he realized that something was wrong and turned to escape. Then, he saw Chu Pingfan raise his wooden saber and slash. A terrifying aura was suddenly unleashed. The sharp saber could not be avoided. He only had time to abandon his physical body and escape with his divine soul. However, as soon as his soul escaped, he felt his entire divine soul turn cold. A terrifying aura enveloped him. Following that, an unknown sinister energy engulfed his divine soul. In his final moments of consciousness, he saw his divine soul turn into pure energy. Looking at the black-robed old man's corpse, Chuping Fan threw out a ball and flew above the corpse. The ball instantly turned into a huge fireball. The terrifying flames swept out and engulfed the corpse, instantly turning it into ashes. Following that, the ball of flames withdrew and returned to Chuping Fan's hand. Yu Bebe was completely stunned. An Emperor Realm expert had fallen so easily. His corpse had been directly destroyed. The gaze she used to look at Chuping Fan changed. On the other side, the black-robed old man's divine soul had already turned into a lump of soul materials. Yu revealed herself and came over to Chuping Fan's side. Do you want it? Chuping Fan shook his head. Yu directly swallowed the soul materials and began to refine them. Once she refined this lump of soul materials, her cultivation level would increase by at least a minor realm. This was the first time Yu Bebe had seen Yu's appearance. You're a divine soul. Yu's ghostly body did indeed seem to have many similarities with a divine soul. I'm a ghost, not a divine soul. Ghost? Yu Bebe was stunned. She had never heard of ghosts in this world. Yu ignored her. Her figure disappeared as she perched herself on Chuping Fan's shoulder. Alright, your crisis is over. You can leave now. Chuping Fan waved his hand and said, we don't owe each other anything anymore. Yu Bebe looked as if she had discovered a new continent. How could she leave? Furthermore, her protector, Granny Fan, had disappeared. She would only be safe if she followed Chuping Fan. What's your cultivation level? How old are you? It's none of your business. Why are you going to the central county? I'm familiar with it, so I can guide you. Yu Bebe was not stupid. Chuping Fan must be much younger than her if he called her an old lady. He had to be an Emperor Realm expert himself if he could kill one. Such a young Emperor Realm expert was unheard of. I'm going to challenge the Ji family and grind their faces into the ground. Chuping Fan said proudly. She understood. He had a grudge against the Ji family. Yu Bebe patted her chest and said, Brother Fan, don't worry. I'll definitely help you. How are you going to help me? I'm going to challenge my peers in the Ji family openly. I'm going to defeat all of them and stomp them to the ground. I'm going to make the Ji family lose their dignity. That's a good idea, comma.